4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for February 27th. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stephen, are there any announcements for this evening?
I just have one. For those of you who read the reminder, you're familiar with the name Christopher P. Goudreau, and if you watch the meetings, you sometimes see him in the background. And this is, I think, Chris's last week. The reminder: he's taken a new job writing for the Valley Advocate. So I just want to congratulate Chris and wish him luck on his new adventure, and thank him for the, I think, really good objective coverage of town affairs. So congratulations, Chris.
Yes, thank you. We'll miss you, but I'm sure you'll enjoy your new job.
Well, you can always come back. Make stories.
Yeah.
I have a media announcement. They had the Academy Awards, and so you look and see what's competing on the other channels, and we were on the other channel.
We were.
It must be that our ratings are high enough that they thought we could compete. But our last meeting was on Channel 12. Thank you out there in TV land. Now, can I get the folks out in TV land, just raise your hands if you were watching us instead of the Academy Awards.
I don't normally watch that, but I did watch it a little bit of it last night, and I think we should take an unsuspecting group of residents and bring them into here sometime in our meeting, like Jimmy Kimmel did with the tour bus.
Yeah,
that'd be fun.
Yes. All right, do we have any resident comments tonight? No?
No.
Okay, any Select Board comments? All right, we're moving along then. So is the superintendent and the schools are going to make a presentation. Superintendent O'Shea, thank you very much for coming in. And anyone else who from the school committee wants to come up is welcome to, or stay in the background, whatever you want.
That'd be Michelle.
There are two chairs.
And the Superintendent O'Shea is going to go over the school budget as well as any changes on the SOI and answer any questions we might have, because tonight we have on the SOI and the joint resolution.
Are you going to dim the lights first?
Sure.
Just so they can't.
Yeah, I'm not sure which switch it is, but you probably know. So I thank you for the opportunity to present the recommended budget. The budget was voted by the school committee on February 7th, and I will sort of give you a kind of an abbreviated overview of the presentation that was provided to the school committee and at the public hearing. Hopefully information that's relevant to you as a select board. My thanks to the school committee, to Tom Mazza, our Assistant Superintendent for Business, and to the select board for kind of regular exchange of information. Tom's been working closely with Stephen Crane, Paul Pasturzik, and I feel like it was a lot of good, robust discussions throughout the budget season, which I know we're not at the end of, but probably closer to the beginning of than anything. So I'm a firm believer that it's important to have a budget that is driven by goals, and I think one of the messages that I've heard from the school committee and the community since I came on board was that it's important to have a budget that's aligned with our goals, that is well communicated to the select board and to town residents, but also addresses some important educational goals. And so what is emerged for me is the importance of the social emotional well-being of students. We've made great strides in terms of technology integration. That's an area that we want to continue to improve upon. And certainly there are many curriculum initiatives underway. And I would say that it's clear to me that Long Meadow residents value class size as an important ingredient of our success. So the goals that are on this slide sort of capture at a high level some of the approaches that we've been working with. In summary, the school committee voted on February 7th a $36.5 million budget. which the important figures for you as a select board, I suppose, the bottom line figures for you as a select board is that this would represent an increase of $516,000 in the general fund, a 1.56% increase over FY17. The total budget increase would be $275,000, a 0.76% increase over FY17. And we'll get into some of the variables that created that, those bottom line figures for us. I have thought it important to talk to the community about the what I see as a shift in the state versus the local obligation for public education. And I think I've sort of, at every opportunity, talked to the community about this. It's important that in my conversations with our legislators, as superintendents, we talk about this issue very frequently. And so one of the things that I think it's important for everyone to understand is that Chapter 70, which comes into the town as an important source of revenue, that when we isolate that variable, that revenue variable, and compare it to overall net school spending, we see that it's decreasing as an overall percentage of net school spending. And so what has happened is that for nearly every city and town in the Commonwealth, Chapter 70 aid has been stagnant, while expectations have grown and costs have grown as well. And so that has placed more of a burden for just about every city and town for the upkeep of local public education. And so I think it's important that shifting obligation is known to the community. And I hope it's something that we can all continue to talk to our legislators about. And you'll see that in FY7, Chapter 70 in Long Meadow accounted for 13.8% of overall net school spending, and in FY16 that amounted to just 11.7%. And so when you're talking about tens of millions of dollars, that obviously is an important shift that we should all be tuned into. And beyond that, I think you're well aware, but it's important for the community to be aware that those who have looked closely at the Chapter 70 funding formula have concluded that it is highly inadequate. In 2014, the state pulled together a commission to review Chapter 70 aid and had issued a report in June of 15 and had determined that Chapter 70 aid really doesn't reflect modern realities. It's based on a formula that was developed in 1993. And it really is not reflective of the true costs of educating children today. It's particularly inadequate in terms of the allocation that is provided for health insurance. The actual costs, and I know you're well aware of this, I'm preaching to the choir here, but the actual costs really have far surpassed the assumptions that are built into that formula. And beyond that, the commission had concluded that special education costs are not adequately reflected in the Chapter 70 funding formula, and that there are other considerations that really, again, don't reflect what the costs of educating children in 2017. I understand that, for Long Meadow, given its demographic and its socioeconomic profile, that Chapter 70 aid is a relatively small portion of our overall net school spending compared to less affluent communities. Nevertheless, it's a source of revenue that is, over $4 million, and so I think it's important that we're all paying attention to that as a revenue source to the town of Long Meadow. So that's, I guess, the end of the editorial part of the presentation. But again, back to the budget summary. The reason we're here tonight primarily is to look at the FY18 budget. Again, a $36.5 million budget with a general fund increase of $516,000, total budget increase of $275,000. If we were to break this down by funding source, you'll see that the general fund from the town of Long Meadow accounts for 92.2% of the overall budget, and obviously we are, that increases the importance of working collaboratively with you as a select board and making sure that we're communicating our needs and the budget out to the community as effectively as we can. You'll see that circuit breakers, some grants, and other revenues account for a smaller portion of the overall budget. The same information represented graphically, again, showing the reliance of Long Meadow Public Schools on the general fund. At the highest level, when we look at expenditures, we understand and recognize that a significant percentage of the expenditures relate to staff salaries, and we are in the people business. It's a service that we provide, and so we are dependent on the excellent efforts of our staff and our teachers. In terms of the revenue assumptions, you'll see how that $516,000 increase that we're projecting from the town general fund stacks up to the increase that we have seen in recent years. It is well below the increase that we experienced in 2017. That increase was largely linked to the introduction of full-day kindergarten. We are projecting a decrease in revenues that come directly to the school district, $241,000 decrease in special revenue. That is composed of largely the special education circuit breaker reimbursement. That's a reimbursement we receive for the state for high-cost special education placements. And then a matter that I think the select board has some history with, and certainly Tom Mazza could help us explain, is that we're expecting a decrease in the application of the student fees that supported the FY17 budget. So a couple of important variables there. In terms of the expenditure assumptions that are built into the budget, there are those expenditure assumptions that are contractual, that are in many respects non-negotiable, that these are, they're less discretionary than some of the other expenditures. And they really are needed to maintain level service. So I want to talk to you tonight a little bit, just briefly, about how we look at expenditures in terms of those that are kind of mandatory and required and necessary to keep doing business versus those that represent some decisions, some discretionary decisions that we've made. And so on the other side then are those sort of targeted decisions. Excuse me. Computer's a little bulky here. There we go. Those expenditures that are really tied to school and district goals. These are expenditures that might represent some reallocation within the budget, and they are expenditures that hopefully reflect some cost-effective approaches that we can describe for you tonight as well. So I'll spend just a minute on those expenditures that we can see as required, as contractual in nature, as somewhat non-discretionary. I think you're probably well aware from previous discussions that contractually, just looking at cost of living increases, collective bargaining agreements, $526,000. There are step increases that are part of the collective bargaining agreement that will amount to $340,000. And then some other contractual issues relating to longevity and salary advancement. And then beyond that, again, it looks like the network's a little bulky here tonight. Beyond that, we are expecting an increase in vocational tuitions. We have a small number of students that participate in vocational programming at various schools, so we're expecting an increase of about $14,000. You'll see an increase to the athletic budget. That, I'd like to make sure that you understand that that's really an effort to maintain level service. We have had kind of a structural deficit in the athletic budget, and so this is an increase that will help us not necessarily increase services, but rather kind of maintain the commitment that we currently have to students in our athletic program. We have negotiated an increase to the substitute nurse line. We want to stay competitive and make sure that we have qualified nurses in our schools at all times, and then some miscellaneous labor negotiation costs that we need to account for as well. So those are some expenditures that, really, again, are really non-discretionary, and we didn't have a lot of wiggle room when it comes to the expenses that you see listed there. On the other side, however, there are expenses that I would say represent allocation decisions, represent our efforts to be cost-effective. Most significantly, we are anticipating a reduction in out-of-district tuitions to the tune of $386,000. A credit to our administrative team, to our Director of Pupil Services, for arranging programming that helps us reduce tuition costs and keeps children in their hometown schools. And so that's good for children, and it's also a good way to do business in terms of the allocations within this budget. A shout out to Tom Mazza for working with the Lower Pioneer Valley Educational Collaborative around reducing some special education transportation costs. That was an effort over several months' time to be more cost-effective, to have more efficient transportation arrangements to provide transportation for special education students. Anyone watching at home, these two bullets here in no way reduce services to children in the district. These are reductions that I think, frankly, we rolled up our sleeves on and worked hard to kind of make sure we were being cost effective. So I'm really pleased that we were able to achieve savings in those two areas. The budget that was voted by the school committee maintains existing class size patterns at the elementary and the high school level. Again, that was an important starting point, I think, for the school committee, is that they made it clear to me that class size was an important value that they wanted to see protected. I'll talk a little bit about what's happening at the middle school level as well. A couple other things that that you'll see in this budget is an allocation for community engagement and education. We've had a lot of great work with doing a lot of parent outreach, and in fact, we have a speaker coming in March 7th, Jessica Leahy, New York Times columnist, and she'll talk to our parents that night and give them some strategies to raise successful kids. So community education and engagement. Library staffing, as enrollment patterns have changed, we're able to reduce library services. Again, not reduce the service, but reduce the staffing. This does not reflect a reduction in library services. Three areas that I just want to make sure you're aware of as you review this budget. One relates to technology access and replacement. One relates to middle school staffing. And finally, an elementary science material adoption that we are hoping for. So those three areas I just want to touch on briefly. Beginning with the technology investment, you saw that there's a $121,000 increase towards technology in the FY18 budget. We're very fortunate in Long Meadow that our students have access to technology, that our teachers have the tools at their disposal to integrate technology effectively. I think one of the concerns that has come up recently is that there really is no ongoing allocation to support a replacement cycle. So we have thousands of devices, but really, we need to, to be responsible, to be, kind of do our due diligence here, we need to make sure that there's a replacement line to make sure that we can continue our success in this area. So you'll see sort of the student-to-device ratio on the bottom line of that chart. It's an encouraging ratio. We're pleased with it. We're pleased with the amount of access our students have, but we want to make sure that we can continue that. So in terms of the technology investments, you'll see the devices on the left there that are really in high need of replacement. Many of these devices came online in 2011, and many of them are really at the end of line in terms of their serviceability to students and staff. The iPad 2s that are used extensively in the lower elementary grades are no longer supported by Apple. We have some end computing devices that don't reflect modern needs, and it's really a configuration that no longer works in the classroom. So we just need to make sure that we can maintain adequate access for students and staff. Additionally, the $121,000 increase in that technology line will allow us to expand internet bandwidth for school and town offices. As more devices come online, as more material is available online for our students, as we work harder on technology integration, we want to make sure that we've got the capacity there for our students. In terms of the middle school reduction, there is a savings of $162,000 in this budget associated with reducing middle school staffing, especially at Williams Middle School. As enrollment has fallen off, we believe that we can reduce 3 full-time teaching positions at Williams without an impact to service. This will not, we will be able to continue to maintain existing level of services, but we believe that enrollment patterns really don't support the retention of these 3 positions. They're great teachers, they've done outstanding work, but the enrollment isn't there to support the retention of those 3 positions, even with what we're projecting, even with the reduction of those 3 positions. We still think that we will have very reasonable, manageable class size at Williams, about 21.6 students at the 8th grade, which is where the 3 positions would be reduced from. Instead, what we think, and this is kind of a reallocation that we believe is important to make, I had put out a survey to the community when I first started in the fall, and I had asked the question, for this district to successfully improve student learning over the next 3 years, what would be your top priority? So that was the question that was asked of staff and of parents and of the community. The answer that was most frequently cited was to develop supports and approaches focused on the social and emotional well-being of students. So I can't emphasize enough the importance of making sure that we have adequate supports for students' behavioral health in all grades. It is becoming increasingly important to support students' social and emotional well-being. Ultimately, it makes sense for learning as well. And so this budget proposes that we increase school adjustment counseling at the middle school level from positions that are currently 60% positions to positions that are full-time. So we would have a full-time adjustment counselor at the middle school level at both of our middle schools. It really has become necessary in relation to the caseloads that they're experiencing. We think that these positions will help us with community outreach and will help us provide programming relating to health and wellness. And so we're really pleased to put together a budget that will allow us to increase staffing at the middle school level. And then finally, to wrap it up, we've had great success this year with the introduction of a FOSS Science series at the elementary level. It was introduced just in the 16-17 year, but to continue down this path, to continue our work in this area, this budget would have a $44,000 increase to support the purchase of curriculum materials relating to that FOSS Science series. Specifically, it would allow us to purchase science kits so that teachers would have more regular access to the materials that they need at the elementary level. So the total, this next slide here captures the reductions and additions that net out to a $275,000 increase over FY17. So this really captures the slides that I've gone through in the last few minutes. So there certainly are some other considerations for us going forward. The school committee has, really made it clear that they want us to continue the progress, that want to continue the commitment to excellence, and to do that, there are certain things that we should keep our eyes on. Coaching for teachers at all levels has been a very effective professional development approach for us. We want to expand the access to science materials at the K-2 level. Elementary health is something that we hope to introduce, having that as a regular option for students, a health class at the elementary level. And then certainly continue on the road towards technology replacement and making sure that we have adequate funding for the replacement of curriculum materials. Again, one of the things the school committee made clear to me early on is that we don't want to be scrambling to find curriculum materials for our teachers and for our students, that we want to make sure that there's dedicated funds to support the regular replacement of obsolete curriculum materials or the introduction of necessary materials. So that is kind of a quick snapshot of the FY18 budget. The supporting materials were in your packet, I believe, and have been posted online. The line item budget documents. So again, thanks to Tom Mazza for putting all that together. He's been working closely with Paul Pasterzik, with Stephen Crane, and I'm really pleased that we were able to put something together that will allow us to kind of continue our progress, but I hope you see that it demonstrates our efforts to be cost-effective, to be efficient, to make sure that we're making adjustments in response to changing enrollment patterns. So happy to answer any and all questions you might have.
Any questions? Richard?
Yeah, I noticed you had that $48,000 you had in that parking fund.
Yep.
And that fund was intended to be used for maintenance on the asphalt surfaces there as a fee. That was not an educational-based funding.
Right.
And I wonder why you brought that back in.
Well, so there's some history there that's one area that I might refer to Mr. Mazza for some help with. If you can give us some
I mean, it
history on
seemed
that.
like last year there was a liquidation of that fund and a determination that those fees are going to be reduced because it wasn't being used, and now you're coming back and asking for a reimbursement of a fund that wasn't being used. I'm a little puzzled. Maybe I missed a meeting, though.
Yeah, I think what the presentation was showing over here on the left is where reductions are occurring in our budget.
Mm-hmm.
In FY17, as you indicated, there was $48,000 associated to the parking lot at the high school. We're reducing that in FY18, so those funds are no longer included in the FY18 budget. So it's a reduction of $48,000 that we've included. We're not asking to replenish those funds. We're capturing lines that show a plus or a minus. And that is one of the minuses in our budget, is a reduction in that specific allocation.
Okay, I thought you were asking for it to be back. Of course, it's kind of a smoking mirror type reduction anyway, because it's not an annual fee.
Correct.
It was something accumulated over many, many years. I just thought maybe we should spring it out. A general question, and we had the same thing on this side of the table. It's interesting, the rest of the nation can take 0% cost of living, and yet we go up 3%, 2.5% every year. And I don't understand. We, across the nation, people are taking zeros. Social Security, 0 this year. How can we justify cost of living increases of the 2 and 3% when there's no cost of living increases on the nationwide?
So we're heading into the third year of our collective bargaining agreements, and that obligation is set, and certainly we'll have to sit down with all units next year, early next year, and kind of begin the discussions. And I think there are some new realities that maybe are reflected in your question that we need to make sure that we communicate clearly when we engage in collective bargaining.
And you're not on this road alone, by the way.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
We understand it, and it's always been a little bee in my bonnet. Like, how can we get it when the index is not there? It's not based on anything. To me, it's more or less a bonus program instead of a true cost of living.
Yeah.
Because it should offset what the real cost of living did. You mentioned about the athletic, the $75,000, and I asked this for pure information for me. I would have thought that the athletic program would be self-supporting through fees and through usages and all that. So really surprised to hear that total of a deficit.
I think it's, Tom probably would have access to the specific figures, but my sense is that the overall commitment from the budget, from the general fund to athletics is relatively small compared to certainly the benefit that we receive, but perhaps compared to surrounding districts. I think the athletic budget is largely supported by user fees, by the generosity of our parents through booster clubs. But, certainly even in athletics, the biggest portion of our expenditures relates to coaching salaries. And sometimes we're a victim of our success athletically, and as we have huge participation, and we have offerings at the varsity and sub-varsity level in many, many areas, and they are successful in the postseason, and so all those things kind of contribute to the overall size of the athletic program. So relative to, I look at athletics in terms of bang for the buck, in terms of the amount that comes from the general fund to support thousands of athletes every single day. I think it's a modest allocation to support a great program, but I still think we are largely, to go back to your question, we really are largely dependent on user fees and gate receipts and booster clubs and the generosity of parents and the community. But in terms of the specific allocation, I don't know if that's a number we have handy.
Yeah, I mean, the allocation from the general fund has been $75,000 for my 10 years here. We haven't really increased any user fees. We are the highest in that category in all of Western Mass, so those also haven't really been increased in a number of years. Over the last 3 years, the fund has been running short anywhere from $30,000 to $90,000 that the general fund has had to cover at the end of the year. We felt this was a more appropriate approach in identifying that line actually reflects the amount the general fund has to support that program. So we're increasing it by $75,000 to $150,000.
Right, okay. You're talking about technology, and I guess I don't agree with your approach. I think technology should be under a capital program. If Mike Rabel could come in here and somehow say, I've got to have X amount of money for plumbing systems every year, it's just like technology. It's no different. He has to do these. And I agree, you have to have technology, but I think, to me, I don't I have problem putting it in a base budget when it should be in our capital program, because that's what the funds are set up to
So
do.
that did come out of from the school committee as a recommendation to capital planning. And so that, I think, is something that a lot of communities are now wrestling with, is, is our devices considered, should they be considered capital expenditures? Is that something that can be regularly supported by capital planning? I think that's a conversation we're interested in as well.
It's not that you wouldn't need it, Marty, it's just where does funds rest?
Where does it come, right.
And where's the oversight of
Yeah,
that?
yeah.
Because every division chief we have, I'm sure would like to have technology funds,
Right.
because they all have the same needs. And it's pretty sizable,
And there is a portion of this allocation that would be set aside for town devices as well.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. What about 1 out of every 10? I'm
Close.
kidding.
No?
I'm kidding.
It's close.
Tom gets upset. That's it. That's it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Stephen wants to rebut.
I just want
me.
to, no, I just want to build on Rich's point about the technology, if I can. We've had this, in fact, we're having a meeting sometime later this week to have a more in-depth conversation, because you're absolutely right, Rich. And I think if you look at the list of draft warrant articles that we've, kind of placeholders that we've given to the select board,
Right.
a town meeting warrant article for a technology fund similar to the fire truck fund is being proposed. We need to kind of decide what the parameters are for that, what the needs are, and like what should the amount be annually, what would, put some parameters on it like we have for other special funds, dedicated funds.
And nobody's disputing the need.
Right, but I think
It's there.
no one's disputing the need. I think
Right.
what I'm trying to communicate to the board is that we recognize that the approach that has been applied until now may not be the right approach going forward. And so to exactly your point, Richard, that's why we think it should be, some stuff may not fit into the capital plan simply because it doesn't last for 3 years.
Right.
But we want to at least look at a similar annual contribution, like you just said, that we do for capital, like pavement or sidewalks or the fire truck or what have you.
Right.
And so we are working on developing that, hopefully for the annual town meeting, so.
I think in my view, certainly infrastructure and the backbone switches and servers and that kind of thing, bandwidth, that ought to be considered by capital planning.
Absolutely, and it needs to be replaced,
Yeah.
by the way. I want to make sure everybody's aware of that. We're not talking against technology. The other thing, too, I guess that you had a technology committee. I don't know if that ever fully got up and functional. I know that was beat around for so long, wasn't it?
It was, and where that was left was, it actually was originally with the previous superintendent.
Yeah.
We were going to work together and redefine the MOA between this town and the schools, as well as the operating agreement for IT, and we just never got around to it, and Marty and I haven't had a chance to connect on it either.
Yeah.
So I think this process, I think, will hopefully kickstart that and use the creation of potentially this special fund for technology to energize that process and relook at the MOU and how we share IT responsibility and cost and things like that,
Right.
and how we fund it.
Yeah, how we fund it. That's it.
Tom?
Yes, well, Superintendent, this presentation is excellent. It just makes it really clear for us to see the work you're doing to do a good job, in terms of reducing the budget, but also meet the needs of parents and students. I'm just really impressed. I mean, everything just seemed to fall in place, and then the presentation just really, made it clear that you're concerned about the bottom line as much as concerned about people getting quality education and keeping things on track. I guess it was a big plus for us as a community to have someone who was familiar with the school system coming in here as a superintendent, and so, I'm really pleased. The only thing, Richard was talking about the, money for the athletics, and I just was on the phone Sunday with the president of the Wrestling Booster Club, who, explained that some of the kids went to the state tournament, and of course the parents pay for the hotel rooms for the coaches and for the wrestlers, and then through a booster club. but there's also a chance they may get a wrestling mat. Now, when the new school was built, they didn't supply a new wrestling mat, and usually those kinds of things happen. But my impression, or, his impression is that they may be able to buy a mat if the Booster Club puts up, like half of the money. And so I think for people who are looking at that figure, have to realize that, there is a lot of parental support, that there's no way we would be able to maintain the number of athletes in the number of sports that we do without parents supporting. And the school continues to need that support. I know that. And luckily, every year, a new set of parents step into leadership roles to support our athletic program, and, we should commend them. The select board probably should recognize those folks every once in a while. But, yeah, just...
Yeah, it's a great partnership, and I've been so impressed by the partnership that exists between our athletic program and the boosters, and the parents are coming out, they're supporting us at the gates, they're supporting us through Booster Club activities and fundraising, and without the booster clubs, without the gate receipts, without the user fees, we wouldn't be able to run the program that we do. And we've got a program that we're really proud of. I mean, our participation rates in Long Meadow Public Schools are, way beyond what you typically see, so we're really, really pleased with it. And I think this, the allocation that you're seeing here, it's a reflection of what the reality has been, frankly, for the last several years.
Mm-hmm. And when you look at preparing our students for college and university levels, I mean, you look at the top schools, and they're all looking for scholar athletes. Yeah. They're looking for people who will be good in the classroom, but also will participate in a sport in some way in college. And so we are really setting up that. The only thing we left out was the community businesses that they also support our schools. So that's all I had to say.
Any other questions? I had a question on the replacement cycle you talked about for materials and devices, and I know the town manager you were talking about, a lot of it was infrastructure. Have you actually started line items where you're saving, or are you talking about that's what you want to do in the future? An example would be, we have the fire truck fund. Are you talking about putting away a little something every year for these recycle?
So that's, I'm not sure what type of sort of stabilization fund that we could create. I'm not sure that's how permissible or allowable that is, but I think that's something that we'd have to talk to the town about, probably.
But you haven't established one. You're just saying this is what you need to look at, what you prepare for the replacement of these two items. Okay.
But I think it was on the town itself, not the schools setting up their own reserve. It would be the town setting up for the replacement of the town-wide infrastructure, because we have the schools and the town that we all have computers.
Yeah, but they were also talking about material for the classrooms. They know, is that correct? You were talking about material for teaching materials that you need to know.
Technology-related materials?
Or you just mentioned there were two things. One was technology, and the other was
the other was
curriculum.
The elementary science materials. And so, again, just sort of not necessarily having a reserve account or anything for those things, but more having a dedicated line item for curriculum materials. So that we're not sort of scrambling or trying to find opportunities to fund curriculum investments. So.
I have one question, and I'm not going to, Superintendent O'Shea, I'm not going to ask for an answer.
Yeah.
I'm just going to make a statement. We've talked about educational programs and our sports programs, and Long Meadow does not have a gifted education program. And it takes me as a little bit odd that we have some stellar students, and that we've not reached out as a community to provide elevated educational opportunities for those stellar students. And in fact, I know a lot of stellar students do leave our system, maybe come back, but they do leave. And it's not a question now, it's kind of a thought process for the next year. I'd like to know your thoughts when you have time to settle in.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to provide you with an answer. So the survey that I mentioned, where we had asked parents and staff members and community members, what do you believe will be important to our success in the next 3 years? And so I had mentioned that parents were interested in ensuring that we have social emotional supports in place. But one of the other things that came back relates to what you're talking about, and that is the community's interest in making sure that we have enrichment and extension, that we are meeting all learners. You know, we want to make sure that we are supporting struggling learners, but we want to make sure that we're supporting those students who are ready to kind of take it to another level. And so that's been clear to me. I mean, that was clear to me when I kind of came on board. It was clear to me during the interview process. So how we achieve that, I wouldn't be able to answer that for you right now, but I know that that is something that is important to the community. And even our administrative team wants to make sure that we've got opportunities in place for kids regularly. So again, how we achieve that, I think there are, some of the ingredients are already in place. But that, again, yeah, probably a discussion for another day that we could talk about. Yeah.
I believe you have more of those ingredients in place at the high school level, is that correct?
I'd say in terms of the specific coursework that allows a student to select according to their interests and abilities, that's probably true. But
Right.
you don't achieve that opportunity unless you've got the K-8 programming that allows,
Right.
you know, a kid who winds up in an AP Physics class or an AP Chem class, they're able to do that because of what's happening
Right.
pre-K to 8. And so,
I'm glad to hear you say that.
yeah, absolutely. It's
It
all-
has to take place there.
Totally. That's where it
Okay.
begins. Yeah.
Any other questions on the budget? Thank you. I really liked the presentation and the goals that you set out,
All
and
right.
thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you much.
Thank you
You
for
stay
all the
put?
hard work,
Yes.
too.
Stay
And
put.
now, yeah, if you could stay, I know the middle school group is here, and the school committee, as well as the superintendent, worked on the SOI to make some of the changes after they spoke to the select board and some of the recommendation. And that was sent to everyone on the board. Were there any questions for Michelle or Superintendent O'Shea in regards to the SOI and changes that were made? No? Oh, and Russ Dupree, thank you.
No? I'd like to make a motion, we approve the SOI as submitted.
Okay, is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, discussion.
Yeah, I have some comments.
Okay,
And I'll let you.
we're in discussion.
So, as I started the first meeting regarding the SOI request, I had commented how education is really the business of our town, and how, the development of a plan for the middle school students is best done by local stakeholders, not the state. And I believe pretty clearly that people who are affected most by the decision, should be part of that process and have a voice in it. Now, when we look at this, starting this process towards, loans, which is, when you're going to build this, I think that the timing of the building loans for this project is very important when you take into account the work of Paul Pasturzik, our Chief Financial Officer. His assessment of the cost as taxpayers indicate that we need all of the 5 to 6 years predicted by their superintendent before this project starts costing the town significant money to taxpayers. And if efforts are made to rush this project, I see that as problematic and may not be fair to the rest of the members of the town. And so, at point, the DPW workers deserve a new facility, and if this project were to delay or step ahead of the DPW project, we could again be in a situation where maintaining school buildings in the rest of the town will be affected by a DPW that will not be as efficient as the town deserves, just because their facility is so dated. I've also heard a number of families supporting this SOI who indicated they recently moved to town, and it is imperative for the middle schools to be made a priority. To those folks, I say that there are senior members of our community who also feel it's imperative that we build a new senior center, and they've been paying taxes in town a long time. So if efforts are made to place political pressure on the School Development Association, is that the right
School
term?
Building Authority.
School Building Authority, I would find it difficult to support, the movement of this SOI too quickly, because we need time to plan a solution to middle school education that will reflect the needs of the entire community and the viewpoints of families that would be directly affected. I think these next few years, we could do quite a bit of work with, you know, you've already started to have some comment groups, and I think there should be more. You know, I have just one feedback I got. I asked my son, who recently graduated and was a student here, and he said, well, he said, having one middle school would be a disaster. He says, because when you look at the social emotional needs of kids, some kids can get slotted at a certain place in a middle school, and then if there's only one middle school, they could be stuck in that position all through high school. So he said, no, having two middle schools is only the way to go, which is a nice thought, but of course, you know, that's going to be a lot more expensive, and it's probably not going to happen. But yet also there are towns like Milton, Mass., that have made two middle schools in one building. And we also are seeing in the press about folks in the valley who are looking at having two high schools in one building. Because a building is not necessarily a school, and you know, I think other areas of the country and the state are aware of that, and I'm hoping that as we look at how to solve this dilemma, well, not the dilemma, but just how to best meet the needs. But for me, I would see it's a dilemma if we only have one middle school. But that's one opinion in a big town. I also think it would be helpful if the school department could make some appraisal and prediction of how the elimination of one building will affect school department's budget. You know, and how would decreasing student enrollment, enhancement in special education options, and reductions in faculty and costs related to a vacant rather than occupied building, you know, just start to calculate in some of those things. So when this comes before the town, they'll see that, like this excellent budget you presented here, you know, that there are going to be some changes that will help people realize that they're making the best investment they could in middle schools. You know, we really need to improve the middle schools, and we've done all the other buildings in town, and so, you know, we can't put it off, but people have been working on me to convince me that, you know, we need to go and start this process now, and my only concern is, you know, if it takes 5-6 years, like scheduled, that'd be great, but if it happens in 2 years from now because of political pressure, you know, I think I'm going to be a lot less happy with the process, so that's my only comment.
Thank you. Bill, did you want to?
That's my only fear too, is I think your timing is, you know, not good. But it is what it is, you know. But, you know, I just hope when we, at town meeting, vote to raise funds for the DPW, it doesn't get, you know, fail because now there's been an SOI submitted to that. I'm just concerned about the amount of debt in the towns.
I think it's a delicate dance, and we're working together with the school committee to try to, we put the plan on the paper, and we never know what town meeting's going to do. That's why I think we worked on this joint resolution also, and that's going to be on the next vote. We agreed that this should be a long-term building plan that we're going forward, and this is like the first step in it. How that project will finally develop in 5 years, I'm not going to be here for it. The town will probably be deciding whether it's going to be 2 or 1, or what the school building committee authority does at that point in time with these buildings when our project finally gets approved and moved forward. And I always feel that it's a process that we really can't predict the outcome. The only thing we can say is what is the right step. And I think developing this plan going forward, and DPW and Adult Center and then the middle school, for us to keep that schedule going, we sort of have to take the first step on this, even though it's a little bit of an act of faith that we have spent a lot of time studying it, and I know the schools have too, and but it can always get thrown off at a town meeting somewhere. But I think we have to take that first step to start working with the school building authority to see the plan, which we're hoping is going to be about 6 years, and when it will be ready to go. If we delay it another year, it could be much farther out, and that's what concerns me about delaying it. And of course, it worries me that we won't have the DPW that we really need.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not, I'm going to support the SOI, but I think I want to take the right to express my views. I'm concerned what I see happening in other communities, well-founded efforts that have just been blown apart at the town meetings by the electorate just refusing to go along. And I'm very concerned that we don't have more buy-in on this project going forward. I know you get 200 signatures, but I think that's Zippo. That's nothing. We have 11,000 registered voters because other communities have really pitched a fit about consolidation. Tom just mentioned he just basically said he doesn't think consolidation is a good move. I think it is, personally. I think anytime you consolidate and you're not hurting the educational opportunities of children, you've done a service to the community. You're consolidating. But my only concern, and I don't think, I've thought long and hard about it. I don't think it's select board's right or their need to be obstructionist. But I think they have to weigh the needs and say, is this ready to go? And we've been bombarded by the 250 people that always send us the emails. And with you guys saying that you think it is time to at least get it forward, and you think it's 5 to 7 years, I don't think it'll be 5 to 7 years. If there is a real need, and I think everybody at that table, you guys at that table, if it's a real need, it's not going to take 7 years. I think it's going to be coming on down the pike pretty quick at us. And we had 3 very critical needs in this community. And there's no doubt about it, and I'll go on record now and forever, the DPW is the highest priority need in this community right now, because it is non-repairable and can't be fixed. And it's a disgrace. And it's been that way since 1986. And for this community to have shut their eyes and charged forward the way they did, to me is an insult to the men and women that do our service work behind the scenes and keep our sewage systems and water systems going. I mean, we just turned our back on them. I think it's an insult. I think it's an insult now for the entire community to, Marie's going to have this, what do you call it, your resolution. And I will speak to that too. I think it's an insult to have a resolution to say what we should be doing as elected officials. We should be supporting schools, and we should support DPW. We shouldn't have to have a resolution saying we're going to do this. That's why these people elected us. If they didn't, they better get rid of us if that's not our sole purpose. So I don't adamantly oppose the agreements. I adamantly oppose having to sign a document because I said I think it's an insult to the public. But I hope you are ready. The real challenge is going to be, are the people ready? It's not us. It's not you. It's our taxpayers ready. Our taxpayers have to know that we've got some major expenditures coming, and they're going to cost money. Stephen has been working on DPW now for 3 years. He has been up in front of them consistently saying, folks, it's coming. We've been to 2 town meetings. We've got full support, but we have not got in their face with a warrant article that said this is what it's going to cost us. And it's not going to be super cheap because these facilities are not cheap. Your schools are not cheap. We wouldn't expect you to build a second-hand school. We have to build a DPW complex that's up to today's standards for health and safety for our own employees and for operations. And people question why we need this. I said, well, there's compound reasons why we need these items. We got $175,000 trucks right now sitting out in the weather. That's ridiculous. I mean, you can imagine if you guys wouldn't have that much equipment sitting out in the weather. And yet we have DPW. We have people on their backs laying in the mud fixing vehicles because they can't get them inside. It's unheard of what we're doing, and yet we wave this flag every time like that's not important. Well, it's very important. I think the community needs to know that. We've said it up here repeatedly, and I will say it to my dying day. I mean, we're going to support the schools because we need to, and we need the community to support DPW because it's part of our lifeblood of our community. And I don't want this discussion going on where this is hit and miss. It's not. They're all together, folks. We have a vibrant senior community that's in 10 more years going to be 20% of our community. When we built the first high school in our community, those people are now senior citizens that went there. And we have to realize that. We've got an aging community we have to take care of, too. And we've also got young children coming in, but we've also got 20% of our community, and some of them really do need to have senior centers to go to. Just like you have some children that really do need to have the nurturing environment of that classroom for their development. We have the same needs with seniors. Is my church time about over?
Yeah.
Okay. So I am going to support it, but I'm nervous about it. I really am. Because God help us if we're approved and it fails. And I think you know, Marty, you know what I'm talking about. And there have been some of these things that did fail at town votes. What do you got, 2 times to get them through and then ding, ding? You go to the end of the line again, or you go right back into full competition? It's a very short span of time. You guys are going to have to do a lot of education as it moves along, and it's not just the simple 200 signatures of willing people that sign all the petitions. It's going to have to be a truthful talk with the community. Stephen and our CFO have already brought the sheets out saying this is the impact of these different things on our community. We realize what it's going to cost us. But we also realize there's no alternatives at this point. If we'd have replaced the facility when we should have back in the 80s, we wouldn't be in the predicament we're in right now. We didn't do it. We made a conscious decision to kick the can down the road, and we got to stop kicking the can down the road. I yield to the madam.
Just one correction, they're more than 20% seniors already.
You'd be more than 20%.
We're in the middle of discussion. I'm not sure how does the
didn't know if
board
you
feel
wanted to
about
respond.
opening up to,
I put a motion on the table to accept as submitted.
but I have a quick question on that. I received this recommended motions, and there were 2 here. Is Richard's motion going to be sufficient
For the SOI?
for the SOI?
How about if I say that
You would, so the,
Yeah, the specific wording in the MSBA.
yeah, the MSBA provides specific wording for school committees and select boards to
Right.
support the submission of the SOI, and those have to be part of the actual motion. So,
And there's 2 here. Does that mean we need to vote on 2 different
yes.
motions?
Yes.
Okay,
For
so
the
you
2
can say
SOIs.
as written.
As written,
Okay,
every board member has a copy of these, so
Yeah,
as
so-
written.
Okay.
As so can he do 2 motions at once? Or do we have to have motion 1? So motion 1 as written?
Are these 2 different motions? I know they're 2
Yes.
different motions, but is there 2 different meanings to them? Oh, yeah, there is. It's for the 2
It's
schools.
simply
Yeah.
Yeah.
substitutes Glenbrook for Williams.
Okay, and motion number 1, I guess, is Williams School. So there's a motion on the floor to accept the SOI as written by the state recommended guidelines for an SOI submission for Williams School.
And do you accept that as a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Okay.
Any further discussion on motion 1? All those in favor? Okay. And do you want to put the motion
I submit a
on the second?
motion that we recommend for approval the SOI submitted by the school board for the Glenbrook Middle School in
As
accordance
written.
with the state guidelines
Second?
for the SOI.
All right. Any discussion on the second one? All those in favor? All right, thank you very much for all your hard work and the wonderful budget presentation again.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
We
your
now
support.
have the joint resolution. I know the school has not voted on this or discussed this yet, is that correct?
Correct.
So we have sort of, will be doing that ahead of the school committee. That's probably going to be on another agenda of theirs. And is there a motion to approve the joint resolution so we can bring it into discussion?
Excuse me, do we want to bring the other group up? and get-
Pardon?
Do you want to bring the other group up and get that, the diff gone?
Oh, no, I'm just, I don't know if this is going to go or,
Oh, okay.
you know, so let's just get it on the floor and see if we've got an approval. I'm hoping it's not, I had said the diff would be on probably by 7:45 or 8, so we're not too far off schedule.
Okay.
Is there a motion on the floor to accept the joint resolution?
I make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second it?
Okay, any discussion? I know, Richard, you wanted to say,
My discussion will
Your
be
thing
as I
again?
just had.
Okay.
I can't, I can agree in concept but not to the document because I think it's an insult that we have to have the document brought up to tell the taxpayers that, yes, we cooperate. I think, and I'm not being sarcastic to anybody. It's just I generally think it's ridiculous, personally.
And I think-
I'm here to do
yeah.
that without that document. That document has no weighing factors on me. It doesn't bind me to anything. If I want a good feel, I'll go buy a puppy.
And that's true. Part of it is a good feel, part of it I feel is communication, in that we are looking at all three building projects at the same time, and as well as we have an order in which this board has felt is really important. I think everything you said in the beginning reflects what
Right.
is said in here, and that we're having this full discussion. So even though the school has heard it and we've heard it here, I think if we do the joint resolution, this is something that we can communicate to the residents as we go into town meeting. And as you said, they might not care what we say.
Well, now I'll be
but-
very conflicted now because I voted for the SOI and I'm going to vote against the resolution. So I
Which
just want
says
everybody to
DPW
realize
first.
I'm not really wacko. It's just that I have a problem with this stuff.
Stephen?
Well, I think before you buy your puppy, Richard, maybe you should pause. See what I did there? I would cast this in a different light and suggest that, as elected officials, I agree that the elected officials should be showing leadership to the community about what they view the community's priorities are and how they will execute their duties as elected officials in the furtherance of those priorities. And to do that, sometimes you need to go on record in ways that are comprehensive. And the joint resolution, I think, does put the select board, if adopted, and the school committee, if adopted, on record about these substantial priorities that the town is contending with. We've had this conversation before. I've heard the comment many times that there's no long-range plan, and everyone knows that comment makes me crazy because I spend an awful lot of time planning for the future and developing reports to show that we're thinking about the long-term outcomes and the long-term financial impacts and the many ways that these, moving forward on these projects or not moving forward on these projects are going to impact the community. And so I have felt since the first time this was suggested that this really can be the sort of long-range plan, if you will. It really isn't a long-range plan, but it is a long-range commitment by the elected officials of the community to say, here's what the priorities are, here's us agreeing that these are the needs, and here's where we want to take these important issues in the near future with an eye towards the long-term future. So I think, Richard, you worked in D.C. I mean, they do resolutions and sense of the Congress type things all the time, and it's just a way of them saying, we don't have any kind of authorization type vote that's on our plate right now for one particular item or another, but we do want to tell the voters that here's how we feel about it, and that's what I think this does. So I would recommend that the board give it strong consideration.
I'm still not going to take my puppy back. And hopefully I expressed my feelings. I don't think there's anybody in this room has any debate on how I feel about the issues. I don't like warm, fuzzy documents because I find very little value in them, okay? Because I think we equate the facts and figures as they brought before us for every specific case that is brought before. And I think, and I'm capable of doing that, and I'm capable of doing it without a precursor document.
Any other comments or questions on the resolution?
Well, I think it's important that, the school committee, signs this and adopts it also. Actually, I sent an email to Marie saying, shouldn't we do the compromise, this agreement first and then do the voting on the SOI? But, we're hoping that you will support us on this because, it's the best way to move forward, so.
Can I
Was
just,
that-
one very small one?
One very small
And
one.
I'll pick up on Tom's point. He said, I wished we had done this before we did the SOI, and I'm not going to put the horse and cart don't fit that way with me. Because that document has nothing to do with the approval of the SOI as far as I'm concerned.
No.
Then I hope everybody does understand that.
And I feel it's an important statement to the residents of the town. And so
I'm gonna lose on this, aren't I?
I'm not sure. And so I feel it's important to support all three projects and that people understand that there are multiple needs in the town.
There are.
So is Ready for a vote? All those in favor?
Call for a vote.
Opposed? Okay, thank you very much, and again, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Now go buy my puppy.
You go right online now.
Now we're going to move the warrant articles, and I know you've been waiting very patiently. One of the warrant articles is the DIF, and we'll start with the DIF discussion. Is that correct, Stephen?
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
And I know we have more materials on there. You've come and you've presented once before. Was there anything else you wanted to present today before we ask our questions?
No, not in particular. I was just hoping to show you a preferred development timeline for
Oh,
us.
sounds wonderful. Okay.
Oh. I don't know, maybe Marty broke it. He just started talking about technology as thing goes out.
He used to do that in Hamden Wilbraham all the time.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Do we need to have the lights off again?
Well, maybe not. It'll warm up, so you go.
Oh, okay. How do people feel about more lights out? Can you see?
We just have one other side.
Oh, okay.
One other side.
Just give it a minute, so when we do introductions, that'll brighten up by the time we
Okay.
get
You want to introduce yourselves? I know
Oh,
you have
sure.
presented before, but
Yes.
some of the residents might be tuning in for the first
Okay,
time.
my name's Mike Crowley. I'm the developer or hopeful developer of the project in Long Meadow that we're gonna be speaking about tonight. With me is Julie Foley, who works with me. Julie's a resident of Long Meadow, and she's primarily done all the financial analysis on this, the DIF that you're going to hear about and have heard about. And then Jeff Daly, who's a consultant with extensive background in economic development, both with the state and local governments, and now privately. So at our last meeting, I appreciate the opportunity to allowing us to come in again tonight. February 6th, we appeared in front of you and made an extensive presentation. And at that time, I know there was a number of questions that we left that weren't unanswered at that point in time or left hanging because of the time constraints of that meeting. We're here tonight in hopes of answering those questions if possible. In the course of the last few weeks, we've tried to answer one of the questions. Mr. Gold, who's not here this evening, questioned how there would be some form of a guarantee.
Could we take one step back? Because as I said, some people might not have heard your first presentation. This is a development at the end of Converse Street, at the corner of Converse and Dwight, and it's a project that footprint is in Long Meadow as well as East Long Meadow.
That's correct. If you'd like, it's the project as proposed would be a 54,000 square foot medical office building. And then building number 2 is a contemplated 24,000 square foot standard commercial building. And then in the East Long Meadow side of the development would be a replacement of the East Long Meadow skilled nursing facility with a new 131-bed skilled nursing facility, and then contemplated a portion of the existing skilled nursing facility will be demolished, and then at least conceptually at this point in time, a portion of that building would then be converted to possibly a memory care type units.
And you're coming into, there's a special type of financing you're coming in and asking us to support.
That's correct. So we've had a number of meetings over the course of the last 15 months or so. Some of those meetings were joint planning board meetings, and we presented this conceptual campus development concept to the two planning boards. And it was evident at that time that the traffic patterns in that location are of great concern. Our development will add some additional traffic to the existing problem traffic at that intersection. The two towns asked us to go out and look and provide a comprehensive solution to the infrastructure issues there. We did that. Fuss and O'Neill had originally been engaged to conduct a traffic study for the medical office building and the 24,000 square foot, conventional office building. We then expanded that to include the new skilled nursing facility and the memory care building, so that we had one sizable comprehensive traffic study to deal with all of the new building construction that was proposed. In addition to that, the towns asked us to have Fuss and O'Neill expand the services again to include proposed mitigation efforts to best handle the situation at the intersection and to allow for this development to go forward. That concept is what you see largely today, where there would be a new traffic signalization installed at Converse Street at the intersection of Converse and Dwight. There would be some road widening along Dwight. There would be some road widening along Maple Street as it enters into East Long Meadow. There would be re-signalization on the Benton Street and, Benton Drive and Chestnut Street intersection in East Long Meadow. There would be resynchronization of the lights at the intersection of William, Maple, Benton, and Dwight. So when we asked Fuss and O'Neill to come up with this concept, we also asked them to put a budget together, and that budget was originally approximately $2.9 million. Through the course of discussions with the two towns, we've been able to pare that back to approximately $2.5 million, which we believe to be a reasonable budget to complete this project. Myself, as the developer of the Long Meadow portion of the campus, will contribute money outside of that to pay for the further traffic engineering that's going to be required, the design of to complete this project. Fairview Extended Care is also going to be making a financial capital contribution into that project as well, which will also include some study up at the Westwood and Maple Street intersection. So the request is, we realize that the cost of this project could not be borne by the development itself. It would make it economically infeasible to go forward. So there's two choices. We could find a way to try to accomplish a comprehensive reconstruction of the intersection to make it function much better than where it is now, or we could try to come up with some very menial corrective actions that would hopefully make the property function, but not in a comprehensive way. Still, we could probably figure out ways to maybe do some, lesser infrastructure improvements, but it certainly wouldn't create the type of situation that we're hoping for, which is a comprehensive solution. So I contacted Mr. Daly because Mr. Daly's and I have a relationship in terms of past relationship, knowing each other, and I know Jeff's capabilities. And Jeff had just recently helped the city of Westfield and a private developer get a Mass Works grant to do an intersection on Route 20. We talked about potentially applying for a Mass Works grant on this, but unfortunately, doing so would probably take, getting a Mass Works grant might take up to 24 months. So we said we need an alternative because Jeff, could you possibly go to the timeline? I think I mentioned at my last meeting that the anchor tenant for the medical office building is Bay State Medical. Bay State and I have a lease which calls for me having them into the building September 1 of 2018, and then they'd be fully operational October 1 of 2018. So what drives what our preferred timeline in DIF and private development in East Long Meadow, what drives that is the dates. The October 2018 Long Meadow MOB occupied, in the September 2018 Long Meadow completion. That drives the need or the hope for us to receive approval from the town to go forward with this DIF program. Excuse me. And the reason why the dates are so critical is because there's a lengthy construction period. As you can imagine, this is a large development that's going to take somewhere between 16 and 18 months. In order for us to be able to turn the building over September 1 of 18, we would need to start getting in the ground probably in June. That would require, all of our site improvements to be commenced at that point in time, ordering steel, et cetera. So what have we done to date? We met with the East Long Meadow Town Council, because obviously they're party to this as well. The East Long Meadow Town Council approved the creation of the district in their community. I forget the date that was, the 14th. As we mentioned to you in the past, the district, what it allows for is the revenues that would be generated from new development in that area through real estate tax assessment would be dedicated to paying for the bond that would be required in order to do these infrastructure improvements. We've met with the finance individuals from both communities, and we've come up with a 20-year bonding plan, which shows that the bond cost for a 20-year bond at $2.5 million would be roughly $181,000. We met with the assessor in East Long Meadow and the assessor in Long Meadow, and we've come up with what we believe to be a minimum amount of tax revenue that would be generated from our development and through the developer agreement that East Long Meadow is going to have with Fairview Extended Care. And the revenue stream the minimum revenue stream that we expect to be generated from this development fully offsets the cost of the bond and the tax revenues that are already being received from these properties by these two communities at this point in time. So what we're asking the town or the Board of Selectmen to do tonight is to move forward and approve a warrant article that would go on the town, go in the warrant articles for the town meeting to, number one, create a district, create the district itself. And as we mentioned, this district is going to be the 7.15 acres of land that I'd be buying in Long Meadow from Fairview Extended Care. And then the second part of the article, the second article would be to approve a funding plan to support that district. And that would be the $2.5 million. We understand that a majority vote would be for the first article, which would be to create the district, and then a 2/3 majority would be required to, so a simple majority to approve the district, and then a majority, super majority to approve the financing plan. So we've put forward to you, I believe, 2 proposed warrant articles.
We didn't do that here, no.
Okay, that was in East Long Meadow, I'm sorry. So we would work with the community, the Board of Selectmen, to develop what those 2 warrant articles would look like. And so we're here hopefully tonight to answer any hanging questions that didn't get answered at the February 6th meeting.
And you just began earlier to talk about Mark Gold's concerns.
Yes.
And you were going to address those about the guarantees within the agreements that
Yeah.
we were all concerned about between East Long Meadow and us and the developer and us in regards to those minimum,
Right.
covering the minimum costs.
So Fairview Extended Care and East Long Meadow have come to an agreement as to the amount of money that they would guarantee to be provide into the bond payment. There would be a form of an intermunicipal agreement between Long Meadow and East Long Meadow. East Long Meadow's contribution for the bond would be $20,000 annually. The bulk of the payments would be coming from the Long Meadow project, because that's going to generate the largest share, obviously the entirety right now of the tax revenue that would be generated from this campus development. There is potential for additional, so as I said, the medical office building alone, the base value that Bob Leclerc has come up with, which is a minimum of $7.5 million, would generate a sufficient amount of revenue along with the $20,000 coming from East Long Meadow to make the bond neutral. So the question, we had run a pro forma using a 0.75% annual appreciation rate, which Mr. Gold questioned. He said that, property values, commercial property values in Long Meadow had not actually appreciated, in certain cases had depreciated. I think Mr. Leclerc looked into that, and there's actually contrary evidence to that since Mr. Leclerc came in, I think it was 1996, commercial property values are actually up in the town about 66%, so on average 4.6% a year. So the 0.75% annual appreciation rate that we used seems at a minimum reasonable, if not quite a bit understated. So if you looked at the financial model that we provided to you at that point in time, it showed that there was a sizable, as time went on, there would be a sizable excess of cash flow coming into the project that would go into the town's general fund. And then after the 20 years when the bond was paid off, then all of that revenue would inure to the community. Mr. Gold, in deference to his question, we actually ran the bond, or we ran the financial model at static, at a 0% increase for the 20 years, and that still produced in aggregate a net positive dollar amount for the 20 years worth of bond payments. His other question was, well, what if property values do go down? Well, we've come up with a resolution that we've proposed to the town that Jim Martin, who was here with us, Attorney Jim Martin, who was here with us at the first meeting, unable to be with us tonight. Jim came up with a resolution that would be a proposal that we would provide a bond for the first 2 years of construction, a surety bond of sorts, or a letter of credit, whichever the town would prefer, to guarantee until the property got constructed and it came on the tax rolls in earnest. And then going forward for the next 18 years, we would also provide a similar type of bond, only much smaller, to cover a delta that in the event that there was potentially some decrease in property values or tax revenues, that what we believe is a reasonable compromise in that regard to provide the comfort level that the town would be looking for.
Any questions for?
Well, the last time you presented here, one of the things I asked about was having a place for a bus stop. And I think, for me, that would still be something that I'd really like to get a commitment from you folks that, you could do something with, not on anyone else's property, but on your property, that you'd find some way that there would be either vehicles could go into the property and drop people off, or on the outside of the property, just because, we're trying to promote a green community and public transportation, and we'd like you to cooperate with us in that journey. We know that there would be a lot of folks, we believe there'd be a lot of folks who would try to take the bus there, and it could help promote bus use if you could do that. I don't know if that could still happen.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Severia from Fuss and O'Neill is committed to looking at that.
Yeah.
We haven't done that to date. I mean, it's
Yeah.
only been 2 weeks since.
I think I'd want more than a commitment to looking.
Again, go ahead, Steve, can you answer that
Yeah.
question?
Well, I think the project can commit to having discussions with the PVTA
Okay.
on their preference for a location or design of a bus facility within the site.
Okay.
But it's going to be completely up to the PVTA how they
Their preferences,
propose to
sure.
serve the site, whether they could, they tend to be very sensitive to their schedules and their timetables. And if it amounts to a big delay on their part, they may decide for some other solution. Certainly the infrastructure improvements could incorporate a bus stop out on the street.
Okay.
That may be an acceptable alternative.
Okay, that sounds good.
I will say that I am fully committed to that.
Okay.
In fact, I own a large medical property up in Amherst, Mass., which is a 45,000 square foot medical facility, and the PVTA bus route actually pulses right through our property. And
Great.
we just created a whole new travel path for them in October, as a matter of fact. So we are familiar with how the PVTA operates and how important it is for have public transportation to these facilities. So I am committed to it, but I can't commit PVTA to
To what they do
putting a
all.
bus stop there.
Okay, well, Your commitment is enough for me. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
One of the things that people have said to me is, you look at the rendering of the aerial and the design, oh my God, you got, lanes and bike lanes and sidewalks, and you got a full road build there, but actually that's driven by our planning.
Exactly. You have a bylaw that has what's called a complete street bylaw.
Right.
So it's kind of required.
Which includes the analysis of the bus stop. They have to evaluate it. As Mike noted, only PVTA decides where they're going to put them, but they have to at least, and they have been doing that. And I think, to Bill's point, if I may, looking at the traffic plans, we just, last year, 2 years ago, we did a major drainage project on Dwight Road that really has never been finalized because we've been working on this project, and we thought that maybe changes to the road would come along, not as many as we thought once the diff project took over. But it was widened substantially. If you recall, the shoulder was widened. And so when you're driving out there today, my belief, kind of trying to look out through my mind's eye, is that it's not going to look, it'll look different, but it's not going to feel like you're going from a country road to a superhighway because we've already expanded it to increase the flow of traffic. And this is going to, I think, build on that some more, to be sure, but not twice as much asphalt. I think it's already kind of 2 lanes in either direction, and we may add a bike lane or expand the shoulders a little bit, but it'll all be within the right-of-way except for a small area on their side of the right-of-way and their property. So I want people to give people confidence that it's not going to look dramatically different. It's going to work dramatically better, but it already is a pretty wide road out there today, and I think that's a key point.
And the other thing, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the other thing that we're also committed to is working with the town and going to the state. We believe we're far enough along, or will be certainly far enough along by the end of July, that we'd be able to make a submittal to the state for a Mass Works grant.
Well, that's wonderful to hear.
Again, no commitments.
Right.
We have had, Mr. Dale has had discussions with the state. They're aware of this project. They find it intriguing. I think there's a lot of interest in the fact that this is really one of the first time that a DIF is actually being employed under the new regulatory framework, which allows for communities to control the DIF, whereas in the past, as I mentioned the last time, it used to be the state that oversaw this type of project.
Richard?
Yeah, I'm somewhat concerned, I'm disappointed, really, that this order is before us, before our planning committee's had a chance to look at this and to meet with these gentlemen. I understand they're going to meet with them Wednesday. So I throw that on the table. I did take some time, and I'm not super up to speed on this thing, but I took enough time. But I happened to be on vacation when you first introduced. And it seems to be quite a departure from what the state had originally intended DIFs to be for what we're doing. And I consider this more of a project of opportunity instead of a project in the state guidelines to get rid of blighted, distressed properties, et cetera. And I understand it may be eligible, but it is quite a departure from what the law was originally intended for. We don't have the properties like Chicopee and those areas where they can go in and really change this. But this is more of a point of opportunity. I think I expressed before, and it really has nothing to do with you guys. It has to do more with what we're doing here in the town. With the needs on Dwight Road, I'm quite disappointed that we didn't have it in the TIP program, if it was a striking need. And the thing comes back to me now, what about if the extension was not brought out onto Dwight Street? Was this development going to die?
I'm sorry?
What about if the entrance is
extension?
not brought out on Dwight Street?
Do you mean the entrance? Oh, I'm sorry. Well, that would be up to the planning board. The planning, we have met on a couple of occasions with the joint, could you put that back up? Thanks. We, Mr. Foster, we have met on a couple of occasions jointly with both towns' planning boards, and what came back to us was traffic.
Right. But I mean, you're still actively pursuing meetings with planning. Planning's not signed off on this yet.
No, absolutely, and you'll see that by virtue, if you go back to that chart, you'll see where we start planning and we go from March through May. It's our hopeful that within those 3 months that we'd be able to
Right.
reach approvals from the two towns.
And I fully understand the fact sometimes we get projects that the timelines collapse in on us, but also, I guess I go back to the enabling legislation on our form of government. We're driven by committees and input by a lot of groups, and we need that coming to us, these isolated professional groups that meet and advise the board. In this case, we're not being advised. We're not being able to get that input. I feel a little bit disappointed in that. It's not a major problem, but it's still a departure. And I have some difficulty with the fact if this was a major project, and I think we expressed it with the town manager, I'm not blaming Stephen, it's our organization. We failed ourselves internally. It should have been in the TIP program, at least identified and being pushed forward and design work done on it. And now it seems like it's a point of opportunity now to put it into the DIF program, and kind of looks like we're kind of sliding in sideways into the program. It was never intended for that. Is there any guarantees this is going to be approved by the state?
It doesn't have to be.
Okay, so then it is our approval, then
Yes.
it's going to pick up.
Yes.
Okay, so then we're kind of going a little bit against the guidelines of what this program was originally set up for. Well, Stephen's shaking his head,
No,
but
I think what we're looking at here is we're looking at the funding source. That's what we have to make a decision on. And the planning, it's two different processes. As you said, you would prefer the planning to occur before the funding source, but we have to make a decision whether it's going to go on the warrant article. And if we have a planning board that speaks against the warrant article, then we will then hear their voice. So their voice will be heard.
I think I'm-
And this is a matter of keeping it on the warrant and moving the process
well, it's not
forward.
on the warrant right now. It hasn't been put on the warrant. I'm pretty well familiar with what you're saying. I'm just talking about the project in itself. It's being brought before us for a decision, and we've had not an opportunity to talk with our internal groups and see what their opinions are. And I really don't think it's appropriate for this board to say, yay, we're going to support this, and then we turn around and our planning committee goes to the town floor and says, we don't agree with this thing. I think it kind of shows we're talking about these MOUs and these memorandums and all this stuff, and that kind of shows a flaw. Stephen's being very patient with me, but he's wanting to.
You got to turn around, Richard, on this one, because
I haven't turned around.
Yeah.
the planning board. First of all, the planning board is an elected regulatory body. They make their own decisions. They're not advisory to the select board. And the second thing is, and I think that this timeline is important in that the planning board site plan review that we're going to be doing Wednesday night is going to include a discussion about traffic. And the best answer that we, as the town planning department and the developer, can come up with for addressing the traffic generated by this project specifically is this DIF proposal. If the board doesn't give some kind of endorsement of the DIF proposal, then we go to the planning board empty-handed with really no effective ability to deal with the traffic issues that the planning board is going to raise. That's the select board's role in this, is giving us is providing the opportunity to go to town meeting and ask for the tools to deal with the traffic issues that are going to be raised by the planning board and the site plan review. I think the one word the one word I completely agree with you on is opportunity. Yes, this is a tremendous opportunity that we are availing ourselves of to solve a problem and really address what is a deficiency in terms of prioritization that the community has made for years. I mean, I agree with you. All of our major intersections and streets should have been on the tip list for years, but for a variety of, some of them are. We're getting Converse Street done this year, and Longmeadow Street's next up. But this gives us a way to address this major problem without having to wait for the tip to come around to town again. I would also say that this opportunity has many ancillary benefits that we really haven't spent a lot of time talking about here. Not the least of which is, if town meeting approves the DPW, this will help manage the traffic issues that are surely going to get raised in the discussion about putting that facility on Dwight Road. The capacity for the intersections will be easily able to absorb the additional traffic by the DPW by virtue of this work. And I think that the key thing for tonight, and looking ahead into the immediate future and looking at the timeline, is because of our form of government, like you just suggested, Richard, there are certain steps that have to take place at certain times. and the developer has certain timelines that he needs to meet. He's a real person, and he has real money that he needs to spend to create a real office building that will have a real benefit to people who avail themselves of healthcare in Long Meadow. People in Long Meadow are going to be able to go to this facility instead of going elsewhere to another community to get healthcare. And that's a great thing. And the point is, because of our town meeting structure, we need to ask for these votes from town meeting in May. But the select board won't be asked to approve, to actually borrow the money. All we're asking for is the authorization to borrow money, for the select board to borrow money. If we get to the end of the design and we go to bid this project and it's out of reach, then the select board can rethink that, does not have to use that authorization granted to it by town meeting. But for us to move forward, for the developer to have confidence that the town is committed to supporting this effort, this partnership jointly, and I think if we're going to be pursuing opportunities at the state, we'll need to show the Commonwealth that we're committed to this. If we're going to ask them to offset our costs in this endeavor, it just so happens that with the nature of the timeline of this somewhat complex and new to us deal, we just need to do these votes for town meeting now, but the real commitment of funds won't be till probably the fall at the earliest. And so we have plenty of time between now and then to continue to evaluate how this goes.
Mr.
I'm
Foster?
actually quite excited about this project because the two highest accident are those two intersections that we're now dealing with. It's almost like the MGM negotiations. They came in and pointed out that they're only increasing problems at those intersections that we're dealing with by 10%, maybe 15%. Because we have a serious problem. These intersections are already moving into a serious problem. I don't know whether they're E, Ds, or Cs, but this is going to help tip it over. You're putting serious money on the table to help us with that. But a lot of this is now an opportunity to solve this problem. You say it's not a blight of buildings, it's a blight of traffic right there. It really affects people's lives here in town and endangers their lives because of the amount of accidents that we're having there. The extra little touch of joy is that if we do put the DPW there, this is going to solve one of our problems of that development in the area. Then the third thing that's so exciting is to see alternate sources of tax revenue other than our residential property tax. And you said something tonight that I did not know, which I was happy to hear, that what our requirements will be covered by the minimum tax we could be seeing.
Exactly.
So there really is a positive flow of taxes every year. We don't have to wait 20 years to see a positive flow. And if we do see this development, I've heard in your previous presentation, there might be an additional building put there, which will be total cream on top of everything, which will solve our hitting the wall on our tax rate that's coming up pretty fast. Yes.
It'll help ameliorate that.
You're 20 years out, Maria. It's a
No,
20-year
but
No.
there's other development that would be real-time.
But yeah, I know.
So the only thing I'll point out,
Space shuttle
Richard,
too. Come
there
on
is-
now.
there
It's not on the plans. It's not reality.
But it's a
hypothetical.
possibility. It's a
So,
possibility.
It
Richard,
is hypothetical.
Well, where would
to your
it
point,
go?
though, there already is a driveway from
Yeah.
the site onto Dwight Road.
Oh,
And
that's still, okay,
They
great.
already have a driveway in Dwight Road, which is
Right.
offset from Converse Street, which is really kind of an awkward movement.
Right.
You know
Right.
as well as anyone, you really want to have intersections have good geometry and be ideally T intersection.
Absolutely.
Like
But-
this.
But see, everything I'm hearing.
And that's what this will do as a part of the project.
Everything I keep hearing, though, keeps reinforcing the fact that this should have been a high priority and a
Sure.
tip
So why are we
project.
But in
saying,
10
why are we
years
saying
ago,
no to
that
it
should have
now?
been
Well,
decided.
because
We're gonna say no
I
to it
can
now
fi-
because
I
it
can
wasn't a
fi-
priority before?
I can finance this anyways. It's the highest priority need we have in our community. We'll finance it with a warrant article. You don't have to go for a DIF program and put it out for 20
But it's
years.
an
Why not?
opportunity. Why wouldn't
Why
you?
not?
I don't
So,
understand.
I don't understand the big opportunity. It's coming out of our tax revenue. What's
It's
the opportunity?
always going to come out of our tax revenue.
That's right. It
Or
is.
the other, yeah.
But this doesn't
But
displace another
that comes
priority.
to the priority of the need. That's what we tried to bring out last meeting we had. What is the priority of our need?
Well, I think that the other thing is, we really couldn't even focus on this area. I mean, we're focusing on Long Meadow Street from Enfield line all the way to Springfield line. We're focusing on the whole distance of Converse, and that took a lot of time from our town manager to make sure everything was happening for sidewalks in that area. You know, you can only do so much.
Tom,
There's no way we could have done this also.
I submit the
don't
fact
see
that
how.
what you said, you have no knowledge to back up. because there has been no developments in those areas. Those projects were they were started long before Stephen got here. I understand you're trying to
Yeah.
calm the waters, but the
Yeah.
fact is that's not oil on the water. It doesn't slick it out.
So we should have been moving on this sooner, is what you're saying.
This is a major thing.
Yes.
And as I say, I have some misgivings on this thing being, first of all, pushed at us pretty fast. Before we've had the opportunity, they are advisory. Every committee here can be advisory to the select board. We will take their, like finance and all, we take all their information. They're part of the evaluation process. I've tried to do some research on it. I don't see the big benefit, Stephen. I guess that's my bottom line. I don't see the big bang here.
Excuse me, could I intercede for a moment?
Yes, yeah.
I'm sorry, Bill.
20 years, Bill, I'm going to be dead.
No, that's not what they're
The
saying.
possibility of another building being built is very real. I think there will be demand for it.
But you will admit that's hypothetical at this point.
But right now, the property generates $7,500 a year in tax revenue to the town. Going forward, just under this plan alone, it'll generate $7,500 plus $176 plus more. That's at the lowest value. That doesn't even include what the assessment may be just on the medical office building alone. It also doesn't include the potential for the second building. And be it as it may, yes, it's hypothetical at this point in time. But I can tell you that the response that I've received from the office community is very favorable at this point in time. So I personally think it's much more than a dream. So I do think it's an opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity. I've heard discussions tonight about a myriad capital problems facing the town and how to fund those problems. I sympathize with you. I was the co-chairman of the finance committee in my town for many years when we had to close libraries and parks and rec departments and everything else under the sun. So I know what you're dealing with. I personally think that this is a great way to solve a very big problem that the town has in that intersection, or those intersections, at no cost to the town, and with quite possibly a significant financial benefit on top of the infrastructure benefit. And could I also address the critique of us? I hope you don't think that we're trying to usurp the planning board. That's exactly the opposite of the case. We've been communicating with the planning board for over a year and a half now. Everything that you see on that plan is by right under the zoning bylaws of the town of Long Meadow. The only thing that we perceive that the planning board would object to is the traffic. So we have found a solution to the traffic that allows for 80,000, almost 80,000 square feet of new commercial space in Long Meadow to come online. That isn't going to happen if that intersection doesn't get remedied. So I personally think it's a great opportunity.
Okay. I've already said all I need to say. But you made that one statement again. You said basically it's not going to cost you anything, and I disagree. It's going to cost 20,000 or 20 years of tax revenue coming off property to pay for traffic improvements.
I've also mentioned that.
I mean, just admit that. You can't say it's not going to cost it. It is going
coming
to
out
cost.
of the project.
It's still tax revenue, Bill.
Which
We're
wouldn't be
paying
there.
for it.
Which
It's
would
tax
not be
revenue
there.
that doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist and
until
never
we
will.
develop it.
But it won't get developed if you don't do the improvements,
I
Richard.
don't.
This is the part that I'm surprised. I honestly am
Yeah.
surprised because for the number of times you and I have talked about need to expand tax base and need to invest more in infrastructure without cutting other things. Check, check, check. This does all of those things, and so we need to talk more about it maybe offline because this, like I said to you before, that this really fits into many of the things that I have heard you say about what we need to be doing in the community. If you don't do the development, you won't get the improvements. It's just that simple. If you don't do the improvements, you won't get the development. But it just so to say that it's not going to. It costs us nothing in that if we don't do this, we won't get the tax revenue to begin with.
There it is. It costs us nothing again.
But it
Well-
doesn't cost. It doesn't displace another priority or another program right now.
It doesn't take money out of the existing budget.
Correct.
Yes.
And
Right.
in the near future, it will add money to the existing budget.
Right.
And we're developing a section in town which is not near any residents, so we're not going to hear complaints that it's in their backyard. And it's a huge piece of property that's been untouched for many, 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 many years. And I think I do not see the downside of it. I do have one question, though, that I think was brought up before by this board, and that is, if you decide to sell to a nonprofit, is there an issue with that?
No, we've already addressed that. I mentioned that. The anchor tenant is Bay State. They're obviously the logical, only not-for-profit buyer that would buy this property. And we've already communicated to them, and they've agreed to the fact that this property will stay as a taxable entity regardless of whether they buy it or not.
Okay.
And we're going to write that right into the deed.
That would be wonderful. Okay.
Sorry.
Could I-
Yeah, gotcha.
Mr. Foster, I just wanted to clarify, not only for the board, but the folks at home, that this was a state-run program, as you had mentioned. For many years, it wasn't actively participated in because it was just bogged down by the state, if I can't find better words. And back in 2016, Governor Baker said, let's give the right back to the town folk and the city folk to make decisions on how they can make decadent properties more attractive by assisting with public infrastructure if developments come along, and or by doing things to help the properties be more attractive for future developments. And in March of 2016, the regulatory authority, which was the Economic Assistant Coordinating Council down in Boston, that oversaw this program, relinquished that right and gave it back to all towns and cities. So now every town and city in Massachusetts can participate in the DIF program, mandated and controlled by how they best see fit. So there's no state interaction at this
Right.
point. So thank you, sir.
And I want to thank you so much that what you said tonight is so valuable, where you said you're still going to make an attempt to try to reach out to Mass Works.
Yeah, and that if we're successful, that could be significant additional revenues into the town because we'd have to bond for much less.
And these, as people may or may not know, again at home, the MassWorks grant program is very, very popular. Last year, I think they had over 175 applicants of different cities and towns doing different projects, some in multiple, and I think 29 projects were awarded. We're going to work very hard if this is approved at the town meeting, certainly with Stephen as the lead, and then certainly with the select board and other folks to try to push this project to the top and really show a community investment, a private development investment, and now hopefully a state investment by the issue of a grant of some sort. It may be $20, it may be the whole thing. We don't know if we'll get anything, but we're going to work really hard with Stephen and the team to try to make that happen.
And being a regional project, I'm sure that makes it
Every
unique.
little bit helps. Yes.
Very unique.
Yeah, if there's check boxes all along these applications, and certainly I'm excited about it, but I don't know what the outcome is. We don't unfortunately make those decisions, but we're going to work very hard on behalf of the towns to put that forward.
I think for the sake of moving forward, Marie, I think, like I said, one of the things we want to do is document the board's commitment to putting this on the warrant in some way. I know we don't have the language that.
So just a
specific-
motion to put it on the warrant?
Just a motion to to direct me to produce the language for the two warrant articles to put on the warrant. And the reason why that's important, Richard, this is for you. Wednesday night, the planning board's going to want to know, does the select board support bringing this to the warrant? And we're going to want to show that level of support to them so then they can work with the developer and see that the traffic improvements that we're presenting as the solution to what their concerns are will be voted on by the town.
Is there a motion to direct the town manager to craft the two necessary warrant articles?
I'd make that motion.
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second the motion
Is that
for 2 warrant articles.
Yeah.
Any, for a directive for him?
Yeah.
Because we need to have the final
The language needs to
wording.
be specific, and so we need to do that. And I apologize for not having that done.
That's right, because we'll be doing the final warrant articles. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Yes?
Well, I just think, communities for a long time have helped invest in giving tax benefits and so forth to corporations that come into an area that will provide jobs and services to its communities. I don't think this, it seems like 20 years of long-term commitment, but I really think we're going to see some returns on that. But I'm an optimist, as you may know. But, I think that, we should definitely go ahead with this.
And it's not as if we're giving you a tax break.
No.
We're going to be seeing
Yeah.
all of the
Yeah.
advantages to those taxes.
I'm sorry, Marie, I just want to make one more point, because it's an underreported thing. Because Tom, I think you make an excellent, I think there could be a perception that somehow he's getting
Yeah.
some kind of deal by doing this. To the contrary, not only is the development going to pay full
Yeah.
freight property taxes, a tax exempt entity is going to be making an annual contribution on top of that, and both Berkshire and the developer of the Long Meadow property, and Mike and his team, are spending substantial, hundreds of thousands of dollars out of pocket based on the outcomes of these processes, and we haven't even talked about that at all.
Yeah.
About the hundreds of thousands of dollars the private developers contributing to this effort.
Mitigate.
That ultimately, yes, is he going to benefit from having the building? Sure. Are we all going to benefit from having that those intersections fixed? Yes. I mean, we haven't even talked about what the private contributions to this effort.
Any further discussion on the motion? Sure. Mhm.
Yeah, I have the one thing.
Yeah.
I'm just not comfortable with it. But that's fine, you got the votes, I'm
I
not
have this
worried
already,
about
and I just
that. But I'm
didn't
just
give it to
not
you.
comfortable with
It's
it,
my
I don't
fault.
know. I just don't feel comfortable with the answers I'm getting. I'm sorry, I just...
In what way?
I'm just not comfortable.
Well, I think,
We'll put it out.
Stephen, it's not back and forth.
Yeah, I know,
He's
it's fine.
making
Yeah.
his
You know,
comments during the...
I'd like to see something in writing in front of me that says this is what we're going to do, instead of a lot of hypotheticals and big fancy balloons.
I do
And
have
not
the
being
line- I do have the
disrespectful,
line.
believe me. But these hypotheticals, I have a problem with that. I deal in reality. I don't deal in hypotheticals. But it doesn't matter, because you've got, like one of our board members used to say, you've got the votes, and that's fine. I just want to let you know, not that I'm against it, I got unanswered questions, and I can't get comfort with it yet.
Well,
Okay?
I think unfortunately in the planning, there are areas in which you have things are sketched out and will be solidified as we move down planning.
That's in your book, but not mine.
My comment is, no, it's not just in mine, I'm looking at every project that we've seen, including the MGM payouts and what we're going to be doing with that. So I'm very comfortable with the planning.
That's
as
in
we
your
go
view,
forward. That's my
Ms.
view.
Chairman.
Exactly, and I have the right to say my view,
Not in the
too.
view of engineering,
Yes.
so.
Is there ready for a vote? All those in favor of directing the town manager to,
Oh, I do have the
Read
actual
the-
language, but if you want to wait and do it when we do the rest of the warrant articles,
Yeah.
we can do that. Okay.
yeah, I would like to stay with
Okay.
the motion that was
Sure.
already put on the floor.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I
Thanks a
appreciate your
lot.
consideration. I look forward to working with you.
And thank you for waiting for 1 hour. Having to sit through all that. Okay, Stephen, did you want to move right into the stormwater?
Yes, please.
Yes, and I thought we would get to you by 8:30, so I'm sorry you've had to wait so long.
No worries.
I always slide on this chair.
And this warrant article, we tried to cover the easier ones
problem
last
right
time, so this warrant article is in regards to the stormwater utility number 13.
Your props.
Thanks. Is there something I can connect?
Yes.
Give us just a second.
That's fine, you waited for us. We'll be glad to take a little break and let you get organized.
That's the only thing that's possible. You don't even know the details on this one. Do you?
Thanks. I don't know the...
I don't know the details of the DPW either.
You should.
Oh, no. There's a lot of stuff here, too.
You need to spend some more time looking at it.
Don't preach to me about DPW
Oh, I will.
now,
I'll
'cause
start waving
I'll bury
that
you on
red flag in front of you.
He's got a DTW data
You
tape.
remember-
I know, that's
You
it.
remember,
It's
I
all,
bought a puppy.
it's all in your mind. It's all an illusion till it happens.
Yeah, only in your world.
Except at least this is a method of of paying for things.
This is,
Oh, yeah, that's right.
we're
yeah.
opening new doors here.
Okay, see, that's why you're in between
Corner.
us.
Yeah, I guess that's why you're here.
I'll give you,
The
You
next
thought it was
thing
hard
is
where you
I'll
went to
give you all
work.
kinds of methods of paying for things.
the property where the synagogue, that'll be developed next.
Mhm,
You
just
see,
hot
things
dog
will
stand,
just
right?
take over. We should have some hot dog stands.
You need to do maybe
Maybe not.
This is so much better.
input,
Blind.
Well, I've been through it a number of times.
maybe computer.
I understand it now.
It's at the top.
Yeah.
I didn't
Oh,
understand
yeah.
it,
We got,
I do now.
Hit it again.
well,
I'm very comfortable with it.
when we have a real estate person who
That's
agrees with
right.
us, that's a good place to be.
Fairly new thing.
Why don't you read the state regs?
Well, we gotta get the governor out here
If
to.
you want, you can find plenty of reasons to not do something.
No, it's read the state regs, see if it applies.
Okay.
State said it does.
Oh,
Are you ready for us?
I
You
feel
better
better.
before
I'm ready whenever
we
you
go
guys
flying
are.
off to the corner. Quick, just start talking. Okay. No, introduce yourself and then, yeah.
Sure thing. My name is Tracy Adamski. I'm a principal planner, certified planner with Ty and Bond. Been working probably for the last 6 months or so with Stephen and Paul, as well as Mario Mazza and Andrew Carr with the DPW and the town engineer on looking at the feasibility of a stormwater enterprise fund for the town. This was something that was approved as a feasibility study on the last town meeting warrant. So we've been hard at work looking at various things. So as part of the outline today, I'll talk about what the stormwater infrastructure in town is, what some of the costs are associated with it, new permitting that's imminent, as well as looking at alternative funding sources and different ways to look at a potential stormwater enterprise fund. So our first look was, okay, what does the town have for stormwater infrastructure? And there's a lot. Most of your streets have piping in them. There's over 100 miles of stormwater pipes. And then you have close to 6,000 structures. These are catch basins, these are manholes. And of that, there are about 335 outfalls. So these are, the areas that collect stormwater. Catch basin is in the upper left-hand corner of the image there. That collects the drainage off of the roadways, off of parking lots, pipes it into a system, and eventually it outlets somewhere into our environment, whether it's a wetland or a stream or just somebody's some open space. Looking at the infrastructure, it's again scattered all over town. Most of the streets have some stormwater infrastructure on it. So the yellow lines are your piping system, and the red dots are all the outfalls that are associated with the stormwater system. And the system's not necessarily new either. So there's a number of capital projects that are ongoing, or there's a number of capital projects that have been done and are ongoing, but there's also a number of capital projects that are still on the books. There have been a number of studies looking at stormwater, looking at the outfalls and what condition they're in, as well as other stormwater flooding areas. Here's just a few examples of sidewalk overtopping with stormwater along Route 5, sand leaking through pipe joints in Willowbrook Road. So, that's an indication that there's going to be an issue, or there is an issue, but that could be something that becomes more catastrophic if left unchecked. And then the Pondside Road culvert invert, where it's starting to fail. And as I mentioned, a lot of work has been occurring. This is Crestview Circle before and after. Again, so you had slope side failure. You had a culvert that was beginning to, be crushed under the weight of the ground above it. That was replaced for a tune of about $220,000. And this is just one of the outfalls. There's a fair number of outfalls that do need being fixed. This is just an example at Morningside Drive. This will be a very similar project to Crestview, about another $220,000 worth of effort here. And as I mentioned, there's 335 outfalls. Not all of them are in this shape, but there are a fair number of them that do need significant repairs. So this all kind of goes into the stormwater costs. So we worked with town staff to kind of tease out what we anticipated for stormwater costs, what the town was currently paying for stormwater costs from personnel, equipment, looking at a range of capital projects. And we also looked at the new, the MS4 permit, which is the municipal separate storm sewer system, which is the S4 of that MS4. This is the EPA permit that you guys have probably heard about for a number of years now. We've been waiting for EPA to reissue this permit that expired back in 2008. Last April, they finally enacted the new general permit. It becomes effective July 1. We still anticipate that'll become effective July 1. So we'll see. But it was enacted. It was actually signed into law back in April of 2016. So we looked at what some of the additional expenditures would be required in order to accommodate the new permit requirements, because it is a lot more specific than the previous permit that the town was working under. And that's about, $600,000 over the course of the 5-year permit. So, another $120,000, $125,000 annually across the years. So we'll talk about some of the costs, overall costs, in just a moment. But just as an FYI, there's the main gist of what we're looking at is, what does a stormwater enterprise fund look like for Long Meadow? There's about 1,500 stormwater utilities across the nation. In New England, there's about 13 or so. New England has been a little bit slower to accommodate these. However, with the new EPA requirements, municipalities are looking at these as a new funding source for stormwater utilities. We've oftentimes looked at, water and wastewater as, discrete utilities that require funds, and now we're starting to look at stormwater in that same light. So, again, as I mentioned, we've spent a fair amount of time teasing out stormwater costs, looking at the last 5 years or so of what Long Meadow has been paying for stormwater related items, looking at capital projects, again, what you guys have been bonding for over the course of the last 5 years, and also looking at the range of projects that are out there that are still on the books that need to be accomplished. Capital items also include things like replacement of vehicles, getting a new street sweeper. So there's the numbers associated with that. And then, as I had mentioned, MS4 compliance. So when we look over the course of the 5-year period so we're projecting out from fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 22, it's about 1.8 million annually. And that's split out, I put the numbers here, approximately 960,000 or so as annual operation and maintenance costs. Again, that includes personnel, it includes, insurance, and all of those that are related to that, and just doing your annual street sweeping and catch basin cleaning. Capital projects are, around the $700,000 range, and then the MS4 compliance is about 120 or so within this pie chart. So, we again talked in general terms about different funding alternatives. The general fund becomes a less attractive place to be looking for funds for dealing with stormwater utilities, in part because, obviously there's a cap on, how much you can increase tax rates. but also because it's not really a dedicated funding source for stormwater. There's, you know, I've sat here for a little bit. You guys have a lot of other priorities that you're juggling, and you know, when stormwater comes into play, that's probably not one of the higher items on the tax.
I had one question. You buy that figure, the 700,000 in capital. What is that based on?
It's based on looking at what you've bonded for stormwater-specific projects over the course of the last 5 years, as well as looking forward to see what are other projects that are in line. So I have a list of projects that from DPW that identify a cost and, you know, a time frame for what we're looking at.
So they are
over the course of the next.
project-specific costs?
They are project-specific costs, as well as, I had mentioned, like vehicle replacement costs.
Right.
One of the big ticket items there is the street sweeper.
Right.
So it's a mix of those items.
And the street sweeper would be considered a sewer project because all that silt goes into the sewers and it causes, you know.
Well, that all still goes, the sewer system is separate. So you have a sanitary sewer system that takes all the waste from our, you know,
Sure,
plumbing from all
right.
of our you know, inside of all of our buildings. The storm system is a separate system. And so the street sweeping is specific to the storm sewer system, if you.
Yeah, right. I would think most of our viewers aren't really aware of that connection, but
Right.
that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, and it's one of the things about stormwater is it's one of those things that a lot of people haven't thought of previously. And I'll talk about impervious surfaces in just a minute, and you know, kind of talk about where that stormwater comes from and where it's going. So again, looking as we evaluate funding alternatives, a stormwater enterprise fund is very similar to a water or sewer fund. So it's specific to the utility. You know, you use water and you pay a certain bill for the use of that water. Oftentimes you use your water bill to figure out how much your sewer bill is going to be. When we look at stormwater, one of the common factors that we use, because we're not really calculating how much rain is falling on anybody's property, we use impervious surface as a way to calculate someone's impact onto the system. We also looked at grant funding opportunities, and really they're very, very limited when it comes to stormwater. There are some opportunities out there for some of the capital projects, but they cover a portion of the cost, and they almost always require some type of local contribution. So I had mentioned stormwater is an indicator for, impervious surface is an indicator for stormwater runoff. There have been a number of studies done that show a direct link between the quality of, between water quality and the quantity of water. So, you know, areas you might have flooding concerns that are directly impacted by an increase in impervious surface. Looking throughout town, you can see where the impervious surfaces are. About 19% of the town is impervious. This is based on GIS mapping, so statewide mapping that looked at estimating the amount of impervious surface. So I'm talking about driveways, I'm talking about roadways, buildings, patios, anything where, you know, you're restricting the water from getting into the ground. And MAPC, which is the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, actually developed a statewide parcel-based a database that identified the impervious surface for every parcel. So for Long Meadow, it takes all of the individual parcels and identifies how much impervious surface is on that. So we use that data to try and figure out how a stormwater enterprise fund might look. And the images down here show, what an impervious area might look like. So a house, the driveway, and then the roadway systems. So looking at Long Meadow, the majority of your land use is residential. And here's a nice bell curve of what the amount of impervious surface is for each residential parcel. And the average impervious area per residential parcel is about 3,400 square feet. So obviously there's some long outliers, but you can see that the majority of the development is kind of falls within a very narrow band. So when we look at the total amount of impervious surfaces in town, about 45% of the impervious surface is relegated to residential. And it's kind of an important number because about 97% of your town land use is residential. So there's a smaller portion that's considered impervious surface for the residential. Then there's a commercial and industrial, a very small industrial contribution. And then there's a contribution from tax exempt parcels. So this includes parcels from the town, Bay Path, JGS, so some of your institutions that aren't otherwise paying taxes. And then obviously rights of way make up a fair amount of impervious surface. So looking at a stormwater enterprise fund, it's, again, a utility charge billed similar to water or wastewater, but it would be based on impervious area and not actual consumption like you would on water. One of the reasons that municipalities are adopting stormwater enterprise fund is it's an equitable way to charge for stormwater. And using impervious surface is probably one of the most equitable ways to figure out how to distribute that cost amongst all the ratepayers within the community. And it allows the opportunity for tax exempt properties to contribute where they otherwise wouldn't be paying for the services that the town provides. So then we looked at what are some alternatives for a fee structure? And taking a step back, again, Long Meadow, the majority of development is residential, is single-family homes. There are some large commercial properties, such as the shops, and some large tax-exempt properties, as I had mentioned. And where 97 of the parcels are residential, only 45% of impervious surface is associated with that. So how do you balance out those costs? We use the equivalent residential unit, you'll see in the next few slides. So taking that as like your base unit, this is what most of the development is associated. The residential development has 3,400 square feet. We use that as a way to calculate what a fee could be for other types of uses. And we looked at 3 specific options. So one was an ERU-based rate structure. So regardless of the land use, the rate is based on how many ERUs each property is. So if you had a residential property up to 3,400 square feet, they would be paying the minimum value. And we looked at $12 and $15 per month as kind of our base dollars, or our base rates. Some residences, if you remember the bell curve, there's some outliers that have a lot more, 10,000 square feet as opposed to 3,400. So those outliers would be paying $132 or $165 based on a $12 or $15 rate structure. if they were, if the rate structure was based on how many ERUs, for that specific lot. So the number of residential customers paying at least two ERUs is about 2,800, so it's a significant number.
So if 3,400 is the average, what would be the mode?
I don't know, but
Yeah.
we did, I guess the median, so we looked at the
Well,
average,
median
the
wouldn't be that
median.
accurate a picture either, because you have, when you look at that full spectrum,
Yep.
if 45% of the people have residential properties, what would be that would kind of be the mode, most of those properties are about the same size.
Honestly-
They aren't that big. Most people have pretty small lots,
Yep.
and then there are some other bigger properties. So the mode would probably be a better way to measure it, for the average homeowner, I would think.
Well, we can look at that, and we can also talk about that as we look at the rate structures. I'll say that the data that we're using, the GIS data, is approximate. It takes an orthophoto and it makes some approximations for the impervious surface.
Yeah.
So when we were looking at the amount of impervious surface for lots, there isn't a whole lot of variation. I mean, there's definitely some variation, but when we looked at the numbers a few different ways, we're like 3,400 or 3,500 square feet. It's really, it doesn't vary that much. And you can look at the aerial photos that are in here, and you can almost see, it's the houses are very, I'll say, consistent.
Yeah.
You have the house in the driveway, and in the neighborhoods, they're very consistent.
Yeah.
And we can look at that number though.
Okay, yeah, because if you can get the median and the average, you
Yep.
can get the mode.
Yep.
And I'd be interested to know what that is,
Yeah. I was going to say, but I think we're using here
the average.
is the average, which is 3,400. The median, I believe, was 3,500. So,
So that shows you, the medium's higher, yeah.
So looking at this rate structure, expected revenue is, 1.6 to almost $2 million. The second option that we looked at was having a flat rate for single-family residences. So regardless of how much impervious surface is on a single-family residential property, they would only be paying, either the $12 or the $15. So all single-family properties would pay that one fee. So the minimum and the top residential fees would be paying the same. The non-single-family residential fees would be based on the ERUs. So if you have a commercial entity that has 34,000 square feet of impervious surfaces, they would have a fee of 10 times 12 to get their monthly fee. And looking at there's a range of impervious surface along the non-single family residential, so that includes, again, your commercial properties, your tax exempt properties, and that using this option would range from about $200 to about $2,500 a month for those non-single family residences at the very top end. The expected revenue here would be 1.1 to about $1.4 million a year. And then we looked at a third option, which includes a flat rate, again, for the single-family residences, so holding those at, one fee for all single-family residences, and then having a declining block rate for the non-single-family residences. So that takes a little bit of the, I'll say, pressure off of some of the commercial and tax-exempt properties. So as a property, say a commercial property has if they meet 100 ERUs, then the first 10 are counted as the whole, so they're 10 times the 12 number. The next 11 to 50 are multiplied by 0.9, so 12 times 0.9 by 50, and then the next 51 to 100 ERUs would be at 0.8. So it allows for a bit of a break for some of those larger parcels. So you can see that the top fee for the non-single family residences becomes closer to $1,500 to $2,000 as opposed to the $2,000 to $2,500 under this rate fee. So it does drop the expected revenue to about 1.07 or 1.3 million.
Now, when you said non-single family, that
Yep.
includes the nonprofits.
That's correct.
And you're talking about top fee is $1,586 a month?
Correct.
Okay.
And there are, so all of this would be regulated by a bylaw. And in that, there would be a crediting option. So for, well, actually for this facility, for the high school, when this was put in, there was stormwater management put on site to deal with the stormwater. So there'd be a credit for addressing stormwater on site. So for some of the larger developments, if they're managing stormwater on site, there would be an option to bring that number down based on a crediting system.
So if we look at a new development and they create mitigation to their stormwater issues, they'd
Yep.
be, how would you decide what the credit would be?
That's something that would have to be done through a separate policy that, it could be a portion of the fee comes off. So maybe it's, depending on what they're doing, maybe it's 20% of the fee comes off or 50%, depending on how much stormwater they're managing on site. And this is just a summary of those three options that we looked at. So option A, again, is everybody pays by the number of ERUs. Option B and C hold single-family residences as paying just a flat fee. And option B, again, has the non-single-family residences paying per ERU, whereas option C has the declining block rate structure. So you can see how that impacts the expected revenue at the different rates, at the $12 and $15 rates.
So tonight, we're looking for not a decision on an option, Stephen.
Is that the end of your presentation?
I've got a couple.
Oh, you do have more?
Couple
Okay.
slides. So anyway, we talked about the 1.8 million. Depending on what option you go through, there might be some additional costs that can be funded through the general fund or through some grants. And we talked about some of the larger capital projects. And the town is actively seeking grants. There's a hazard mitigation grant for Raspberry Brook where there's a grant, $133,000 is the total project cost. This town still needs to provide a match in order to do that. And something like this Stormwater Enterprise Fund could help provide that match. But then you're also taking off, $100,000 or so through the grant option. So those are some ways to look at other funding sources associated with the Stormwater Enterprise Fund. So, excuse me. These were the things for the next steps. For your consideration, be putting a bylaw on the warrant and determining, which rate structure that, if you decide to move forward, which rate structure you would prefer to move forward with. Obviously, public education and outreach to let people know about the need for this and, how this, was put together and why. And then move forward through town meeting. And finally, to draft various regulations, which is determining the credit policy and finalizing the fee.
if we voted to put this on the warrant, are we talking about it beginning, Stephen, by July 1st of this year? Or we're talking about a
We
delay?
have to have the bylaw, sorry.
Mhm.
It would, the bylaw would have to go to the Attorney General's office for approval, and we wouldn't get that back till, usually it's a few months. I would say we'd probably be talking, I don't know if we could do it mid-year, like it's effective January 1st, or we would stick, July 1st, 2018 would be the implementation.
Maybe the ideal time. We also need time for billing, get the billing aspects in place. We could get the billing aspects in place now, but if it fails, we're spinning our wheels. So we'd prefer to have the bylaw in place, what it is, and then get the billing aspects taken care of.
Now, if we decide on, let's say, A, B, or C, and then we discover that MS4 is being changed in some way or to our either favor or detriment, can we change what our rate structure is going to be at a future time?
Yes.
Yeah, I think,
Yes.
and Paul, I know you don't want to get coughed on, but if you'd come up and.
Yeah,
next
sorry.
situation.
I'm at the end of my colds. I just have this like lingering cough.
So I think one of the key things that we've talked about internally about this is we're already spending almost, 1.8 million. We are spending 1.8
Yeah.
currently.
Yeah, minus 100,000 probably, but
Yeah.
it's
So 1.8 would include the MS4, additional MS4 compliance.
Correct.
So call it 1.5. We're spending $1.5 million today doing this without the dedicated revenue source that we're proposing. So we wanted to show the A, B, and C options to show that we analyzed it, looked at it more than 3 different ways, but 3 different ways that kind of emerged as illustrative of the different approaches. One is just straight ahead ERUs, but as you see, there are certain homeowners that are going to get hit hard on a monthly basis. And then there's the ERU, the single ERU for all residential properties, which is the vast majority of ours, and then doing straight ERU calculation on commercial properties. And then you see that some commercial properties are going to get hit hard on a monthly basis. And tax exempt and town, by the way. So then, in going through that, we said, geez, that doesn't really seem fair to those large users either. I mean, we understand that they're, they may be in business, they may be able to pass through the costs to customers, in the case of JGS, people who reside there, what have you. But it still seemed, somewhat unfair. So that's why we came up with the graduated system that was option C. Now, so those are the different options for the fee structure. In terms of implementing it, there are as many different options as you can think of. So so take my house, okay? So I would be $12 a month if we do the $12. So I'm 72. I'm $144 a year. It'll be probably on my water bill. So as a part, every 6 months I get the water bill, $72 on top of my water charge is this fee. So I pay it. The board could choose to lower taxes by that equivalent amount. I mean, not for each house, but over the town. So if we said we're going to collect $1 million from option C. We're going to put in option C, we're going to collect $1 million. We are then going to we're going to reduce our taxation because those costs in the budget that are general fund costs today, the DPW, are now going to be offset by this utility charge. We're going to lower the tax, the general fund collections by $1 million. By virtue of an underride or something like that, so the money can't then be spent on top of a town meeting anyway. So you could offset the implementation of this fee with a reduction in taxation. You could also do a $1 a month fee to start and have it be because the general fund is subsidizing $1.5 million. And so every dollar you collect from stormwater fee reduces that general fund offset, that general fund contribution. So the more money you raise with the fee, the less, the more you can reduce your general fund contribution, which would then, as we've talked about with our tax cap, frees up general funds revenue for other purposes or to return to the taxpayer.
Of course, you know the pushback you're gonna get. It's not tax deductible.
Yeah. But the tax exempt folks pay.
Yeah, because right now,
Right,
we are
but I mean-
subsidizing the commercial and the
Right, but
nonprofits.
if you reduce my taxes, but you have this fee, that fee's not deductible, right? Like my real estate tax.
Right, it's not deductible, but you also
I
have.
know that Mark would bring that up.
Mark would bring it up, but you'd also have the offset because of the exempt properties would also be paying. So there's some offset to that loss of the tax deduction already.
Because it'd be a little lower.
Yeah, I mean.
Right.
Than the $12, because
Oh, true.
you're suddenly
Yeah.
got the,
No, my wife is a telecommuter, so I would write off the utility charge. Not everybody's in that situation, but I think the thing is, Bill, and Mark did, I mean, even walking out here last week, Mark made that comment to me, you can't write off your taxes.
yeah.
The board just has to make a decision, is an additional revenue source for the entire town more important than everybody's individual tax
It's not
returns?
a lot of money.
It's not, I mean, depending on who you are, but it generally is not a lot of money, and you're still gonna pay your taxes. It's not gonna lower your individual property tax bill individually all that significantly. And so the write-off is even a smaller percentage of that. So it's not a lot of money, and I think since the day I got here, since before I got here, we've talked about additional revenue sources. Even though it's mostly the same people paying it, you do have the additional revenue, 60 or 80,000 from tax exempt entities that aren't paying it now, that aren't paying towards these costs today. So that is new revenue, but it's also a new revenue opportunity to offset existing costs for the future. And you know what I give Ty and Bond credit. What they've done is they've laid out, you know, some of the best practices for these, not only in the Commonwealth or in New England, which aren't very, very many, but also throughout the country. And that's why we went with the Mass GIS measurement of impervious surface, because that's the one everybody's using. We wanted to be as simple and straightforward and as consistent with what's happening statewide with these as possible, so people wouldn't think we were trying to pad our impervious surface numbers or undercount the town's number or anything else. We're just going with the same setup that's been used everywhere. You know, I think it's, you know, there may be a feeling that it's not needed today, but again, as we've talked about our tax situation, we're gonna need it someday. And I think the additional cost from MS4, when that hits that probably 150,000, that's gonna cut some other thing in the DPW, that additional cost. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Tom?
Yeah, well, I think, you know, this does seem logical that we would move in this direction because the costs are, you know, you've done a great job of looking at our costs for the past few years and where we'd be in the future, and it makes a lot of sense. Determining the rate structure, I'm still not, you know, I'm still uncomfortable with it. I don't know if this is the way, you know, maybe this is just best practices across the state, but I guess I'm still, I'd rather see some sense, like if we could determine, you know, how much impervious surface each property has, and then could we ever see some calculations about what if a person paid a rate just in relationship to their own properties, you know, how that would be, because I don't know, I mean, you know, I guess it's, you know, there's some folks in town who, you know, an extra $144 a year is going to bother them because they're on a fixed income of you know, less than 30,000, you know, and they're going to say, yeah, 144 is a big chunk. So I don't know if you look at, I don't know if we could do something for seniors or if we could do something for people with smaller properties.
It's your bylaw.
Yeah, you know, because that would, because right now, the only thing that bothers me is the rate structure. I'm not really sold too much on it, to tell you the truth.
That is the way it's done, Tom. I mean, we
Yeah.
presented the $12 per month or $15 per month to show you how you could
Yeah.
get close
Yeah.
to fully funding, to get up over that $1 million threshold, to get close to the 1.6, that's the target. In Lancaster, Wisconsin, where I came before this, it was $2 a month. We had much lower costs, it's a much smaller town, but the general fund still subsidized the stormwater utility substantially every year. But they did implement, to get it started, they implemented $2 a month and put a freeze on that rate for 3 years.
Yeah.
And then it would give the city council the opportunity to raise it as an additional revenue source. I mean, I think you could put in the bylaw some way of means testing or hardship exemptions or something like that, or an abatement type thing, but
I suppose you could almost do the reverse where you have the graduated amount. If they go up from 3,400 square feet to the next, it's like 0.9.
Yep.
You probably reverse that and work it backwards, so that a smaller house impervious service of 2,000 square feet might only pay 75% of that $12 or something to that nature.
But I guess I'll also say that, there's also the actualities of implementing this on the town. So the more that you're, if you're looking at each and every single residential property and trying to figure out what each and every, what their specific impervious area is, then, you have thousands of accounts that you need to take a closer look at. So a way to kind of simplify it but still make it equitable is to have that flat rate structure across.
But you'd only have to look at it once, because their impervious surface isn't going to change significantly. It isn't like, every month you have to look at 1,000 account or 1,500 accounts, and say, or 15,000 accounts, to say that, it's different from this month to this month. I mean, once it's set, it's really not going to change. So we're looking at one time, and I guess it's, I don't know if we could look at some numbers and how that would, because maybe it wouldn't make sense, but maybe if we did look at having graduated systems, we'd only have to figure out the rate structure once, and then once that was set, it wouldn't change. There's good people's, unless we decide, well, you put an addition on, we're going to add, 75 cents a month. I don't think we're going to do that. That would be costly, But if we just do it once.
But you can't have it both ways. If you're going to give somebody a reduction because they don't have 3,400 square feet of impervious surface and they do put on an addition, you'd have to count that.
Well, you could.
Because Tom, the fact of the matter is, if you lower somebody's contribution to save them a little money, someone else is going to pay it because the costs are fixed.
Right.
And that's the thing, and that's why we wanted to do the greatest good for the greatest number in an equitable way. And so if we spend a couple of $1,000s measuring and analyzing someone's impervious area of their house, and their bill goes from $144 a year to $136 a year, and we save $12 or $8.
I'm gonna knock my garage down.
The number of years it would take to recover the cost to do that measurement. Yeah, we don't have to do it once, but it would take a long time to pay the effort to do that back. And I'm not trying to say, we shouldn't try and be fair and equitable. I think, like I said, the option C was our look at the larger properties being fair and equitable, but it's a zero-sum game. If you take it off of one person's bill, it's going to go on somebody else's with the way, or keep coming out of the general fund. Like I said, we're not going to be able to spend less on this in the future. We're going to be compelled to spend more to comply with federal law.
Right.
Oh, Richard?
Yeah. Of course, I don't think you're going to have to worry about that law with the present administration. That thing's already disappeared. That's going to have a sunset likely tomorrow morning. But good stewardship is different. Mm-hmm. And if we have a good African stewardship, we don't need MS4. We know what we should be doing.
Culverts.
So you can't say it's going to go away, because if we're stewards of the environment, we're going to implement. The only thing, Steve, I know we've said, find new sources of revenue, and when you and I talked, it was increasing tax base, not shifting tax load. And I know most people are going to interpret this as a rain tax, because basically it is a tax. That's all you're doing. You're not cutting anything. You're increasing the amount of money they spend for the privilege of living in Longmeadow without any new increases in services whatsoever. And it's going to be a hard sell, I think, at a town meeting. I think you know it is, like everybody here knows it is, but you can't masquerade it in, you don't put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. And this really is a tax, but it's a rain tax.
Well, I mean,
Well,
obviously, the tax exempts pay, that's
Yes.
not a substantial amount of money to tip the scales on it.
Right.
What I would say to you is, yeah, people are going to see it that way. It's always called the rain tax. Even when we proposed the study, somebody got up and called it a rain tax.
Right.
I mean, I'll bet you.
The stigma's there.
I'll bet you
Can't
the
get away
biggest
from it.
bottle of bourbon we can find that someone's going to say that within the first 2 minutes of the discussion on town meeting floor.
20 seconds.
Yeah, so I think the one thing I will say about this revenue source, well, two things. The first is, when we get closer to our levy limit, we're going to need additional sources of revenue on the backs of the taxpayers to keep things going. The second thing I'll say is, I've heard you make the comment many times that when we did the local option meals tax, we should have set it aside for a dedicated funding stream for infrastructure, public safety, whatever. It should have been. It shouldn't have just gotten dumped in the general fund. It should have been set aside for a specific purpose so people could embrace it. And I think when they talk about tax increases, all of the studies, and you guys go to MMA, all of the studies about taxation show that when people know where the money's going and they support that, they have no problem with tax increases. And this is as straightforward as it gets. You saw the pictures of, Morningside Drive and Raspberry Brook. That's happening whether we do this or not. And that money it's almost like the Dwight Road project. Doing that's going to displace something else without an additional source of revenue.
Yeah. And I think there are two pieces that make this really important. One is I think we have to dedicate this money to the purpose, which is taking care of these stormwater issues. Right now, it's going right on the back of the residential taxpayers. We're talking close to 800,000 every single year. I'm watching these go into our planning and our budgets. Long Meadow, as Robin Crosby said, is built on sand, and it's slowly moving its way towards the Connecticut River, and it's doing it through this natural stormwater system we have. I think there are two things we need to do with this. One is we need to protect our town. We need to keep spending money on this, but we can't do it on the backs of the residential taxpayers. So I think you need to have an offset on the residential tax. Number one. Number two is we have to dedicate it to the real purpose, which is these projects. Once we do that, then these projects are going to start being pulled off of capital planning. They're going to be pulled off the backs of the budget where they actually belong. And up till now, I truly believe that people who live on Maple Road are subsidizing the needs of the commercial properties and the nonprofits, because they're the ones with all these huge parking lots and these huge buildings. So right now, it's being paid for, but it's being paid for on the back of the small houses along there and the problems that are being created by these huge parking lots, including any future development we see on Dwight Road.
He's actually his site plan includes all on-site stormwater retention and management, because I told him that we're going to be presenting this right after he leaves. But I think, but that's the thing, Richard, to your point, it's an enterprise fund. It is siloed for that specific purpose by the very creation of it, and that's what separates it from a tax.
The only thing I think she got close touching base on it. I agree with the fund, the concept. I don't agree with it offsetting labor, routine labor. Because I think we founded the town.
Yeah.
We set the tax base based on our labor force, and now we're coming back, we're going to say, but we're going to take and pay for the labor again. And there's $1 million that's going to flush back. So that's my problem with it, Stephen, is that if it's all going to infrastructure repair, 1,000% support. But if it's just going so we can hire more people or offset our labor costs, then it doesn't help us, because we don't really move forward. What you're proposing is what we're spending now. You're not proposing an actual increase in infrastructure repairs.
Well, the capital projects actually do incorporate spending for real projects.
Well, we have that now too.
True.
So I mean, this is not a doubling up of what we're spending on capital.
But by pulling it out of the general fund, we're not sharing it with all of the other departments. We're saying this is a specific need, and this $1 million has to go towards this every single year. It's not going to go towards, oh, we changed our mind, we really want to spend money over here, so we're going to put some of the money there. We can't starve the fund.
Yeah,
Just
but
like,
you can labor it to death.
but if the select board allows it, that's why we have the draft regulations.
Select board's not going
Yeah.
to do it. The town manager runs the budget.
Yeah, but we set policies.
Oh, it doesn't matter. He's
Oh,
still going to
yes.
run the
Our
budget.
Richard, I
policies are
think
pretty
You
important.
could actually write in the bylaw, though, how you wanted to do it.
But
Right.
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying.
I do know what you're saying. I don't agree with you because we don't handle the water and sewer enterprise funds that way.
But you did in the past, and you're correcting it now.
We're correcting it now.
Okay? You
Yeah.
can't say
Because
those
the select
funds.
board
that we
watched
don't-
it.
Don't want to get into discussion, but you keep pounding labor against these funds.
But the
And you
select
don't
board
get the work
stands up.
done. You employ a workforce, but you don't get any more work done. And I think if I'm going to pay extra money, I want to see work get done.
Right, but but the people that are actually doing, or some of the people, other than like jobs that we bid out, like capital jobs we bid out, the people going down and doing, storm, the jetter truck cleaning out storm drains, those are our guys. They're doing the work, and under the way enterprise funds work, that effort, that labor should be paid for by the enterprise
But
fund.
I expect that work to be done as a taxpayer. I don't pay another $1,500 for police force every year. It's in the tax base. I think that's an intricate part of the tax base.
I
Your
think it-
enterprise funds for your water and sewage is a little different item because that is something that's authorized by law, and it sets up that it pays for those funds and the direct cost there. But when
That's
you
what
get,
this is supposed to be doing.
This is authorized by law.
It's the exact same thing.
okay, go ahead.
But by,
Go do it.
by,
No, end discussion. End discussion. I don't need to sit there and argue with you, Marie. It's not beneficial to anybody's time, including the public at home, so I express my thoughts on what I feel about it.
We talked about this a year ago,
Mhm.
about developing this and getting it together and bringing it forward to the board to consider.
Well,
let's
that's-
leave things the way they are, and we'll pay for all the larger properties in town then. I don't understand.
There's no basis for what you just said. We're not saying throw it out. We're having an open discussion. I would believe in we were having an open discussion.
Oh, I thought you were saying that
I
you
don't
were
even have a
against it.
bylaw thing here to look at. There's nothing. It comes up and it's blank. Okay? So what's the actual bylaw? Is there something that you're going to ask for us to approve tonight?
No.
Then
Are
how's
we
it gonna
back
get
at
on the
this?
warrant?
We have to do the directive again.
We have a draft bylaw that I'll distribute to the board.
Okay, but there is nothing.
There is, no, we have a draft bylaw. In fact, I thought I had sent it out in a previous packet. I know I sent the draft study, the report.
But it's not in the warrant article here that we're supposed to be approving tonight.
I think, no, we're not approving a warrant article. We're approving that we want to go forward with the directive for him to create the bylaw. I was asking you, did you want an actual choosing of the rate? Is that a separate vote you want from us? Or a directive that includes that rate?
When you create the bylaw,
Do you want to?
yeah, sure. When you create the bylaw, you would determine that at that moment.
When we create the bylaw for the warrant article.
For the warrant, correct.
Yeah, so you need to have a directive on whether we're looking at any of the rate.
So you're
which
not
is-
voting on any of the warrant articles tonight?
No, we're just giving them a directive. If this board does not want to go ahead with the stormwater utility, we're not going to bother creating the final wording of the bylaw. What we've been doing up till now is everyone looks and decides if they want to continue with this project, and then by March 6th, or what's the next date, the 13th, we have to make the final decision on the vote on whether these are going on the warrant. But right now, we're not going to have the staff work on something if it's not the will of the board to move forward on this.
Don't you have to get it worked up to the point where the board can say they approve or disapprove or want to move forward from it? Is this at that point?
I think
Okay.
we just heard a presentation from a study.
I'm talking about from our town manager for the warrant article. That's what I'm talking about.
The bylaw is our recommendation,
Right.
based on they're all kind of cut from the same cloth, these stormwater utility bylaws. We gave you a very specific rate structure proposal, or set of rate structure proposals tailored to our specific costs in the town. So we believe, I think we've given you information that gives you enough to decide if you want to proceed with developing a rate structure, and not only a rate structure, but an implementation plan. Because you can say, we're going to have the $12, we're going to have option C, the $12 per ERU per month, and then the graduated rate for the larger properties, but we're going to implement it over 4 years. So it's $3 a month, and then $6 a month, and then $9 a month, and 12. I mean, there's different ways. There's a million different ways to do this. And then on the backside, what do you do with the budget and the taxation? And and maybe it's something the board wants to defer for the moment on, or I guess we have a lot of other things that have emerged on the warrant to consider, but when we had the fall town meeting, we said we wanted to, or was it the spring? It was the spring, wasn't it? The annual town meeting gave us the appropriation to do this. Right. We said we would deliver it in time for the board to make a decision to put it on the annual town meeting warrant, and I think we've done that.
And I think that the presentation, you've done good research. So I wouldn't mind putting it on the warrant. The problem still is to determine the rate structure. I still would like to see some other options, that would be, even if you, like you say, if it's graduate, but I think it should be more, I don't know. I mean, we're in the age of computers. I think computers can do a lot more with this, and I don't, so I'd like to see some other options, but I don't know if other folks might feel okay with it. I'm just one vote. So.
I like the idea of the graduated in, and then I guess we could also, on the draft regulations, we can look at, people could maybe apply for, whether you said abatement or other things. I know some other storm utilities, Westfield, Chicopee, Northampton, there's a way people can abate by doing things to decrease their impervious surfaces, or planting, or drainage that they can put within their own property.
I don't know. When I talked to people at the MMA conference, they said that isn't really going to happen. There's not going to be a lot of. We could give people, we could look at ways to give people lower rates if they were seniors or something like that. But and that might be the easiest way to do it.
Yeah, the abatement stuff, you have to get to a certain scale to really make it work for people, to make it worth the administrative burden it takes to verify a lot of stuff. Because we talked about that quite a bit, and there really, Tom's right, that there aren't a lot of, great effective models out there, other than for larger properties, total on-site stormwater management. And I think $144 a year is going to be more favorable to people than tearing down their garage or putting a green roof on their house that they probably don't even make right now. You have a 200-year-old house, you're going to put thousands of pounds of green roof on it to avoid $144 a year. I mean, there's the principled argument that I think you're making, Tom, that I can connect with.
Okay.
But the practical argument, I think we've boiled down to what we think is the most equitable deal for everyone, because we wanted to propose what would work for the vast majority of people in the town, and we think that this is I think we hit the sweet spot on it.
So you're recommending option C?
I would recommend option C.
With senior or income credits, is that what you would call it,
No.
or abatements?
No, I would recommend option C with just the graduated rate for commercial, and then if you want to have some kind of credit or make this fee eligible, we have a senior abatement program that's regulated by state law. You could probably build something into the bylaw that allows people to, I don't know if you could, but to work it off?
I mean, there's a number of real estate tax abatements based upon annual income or wealth that we could build into
And,
there.
veteran service and things like that.
If they're eligible for something at the real estate tax level, then they can be automatically eligible for something on the stormwater level, certain things to that nature.
Yeah, you could say 30% off, whatever, if they're eligible for a real estate tax break, yeah. I mean, you could tie it to a bunch of different things.
I think I told you before, I had the opportunity to manage a program on the MS4 in another state. And we had elaborate stormwater systems and elaborate BMPs, and there was you could see what we were doing. I mean, we were increasing the workload on the division. And here we are basically, and we have very few, well, you've got a couple of BMPs put up here. I don't think you've got any other BMPs around the community or stormwater devices. We just got a couple up here. He's going to do detention. But I think I would ask Stephen, and you've been to our town meetings, people are going to say, what's in it for me? I mean, it's clear and simple. They're going to want to know, what are you going to do that you haven't been doing? And if it boils down to the fact that we've done nothing but shift revenue from this to here, then our people get feisty and they're not going to understand it. That's why I was saying, if I can see increased revenue going into our infrastructure, something that you and I can walk out and put a flag on and cut a ribbon and say, hey, this is what we did with your money.
But you can. I don't know that you will at this point, but I will tell you that you weren't here for the discussion about capital last week.
Right.
So Shady Knoll Drainage Project, which would be something funded by this enterprise fund, we cut it off, right? Because
That was $104,000.
$104,000. We had a list of priorities for capital, Richard. Like I changed my approach this year. We did a list of priorities ranked. So when we just said, here's the line, we cut off everything below the line. It was below the line in favor of boilers for schools and equipment replacement things that are higher priorities in my estimation and the capital planning committee's estimation. With this, Shady Knoll would get done and all that other stuff.
I totally agree.
And we wouldn't be
We
delaying
don't
these
disagree on
projects.
that. Not one, and I.
But that's an increase in workload.
I support your fund. I support the concept. It's just I'm concerned that the money gets funneled back into projects so they see a beneficial thing. I can remember on this board where there was talk about eminent domain instead of fixing a drainage problem. Right, Marie?
Yes.
I mean, it was a crazy talk. And I thought it was crazy talk. Go out and fix the problem. You've got a problem in your community. You're the managers. You're supposed to fix this.
But
You
we
just
have,
don't.
we have a historic, we do not fix them until they become beyond
Oh, yeah,
disasters.
absolutely.
And we're at $1 million
Yeah.
project going on Ely Road or somewhere else.
I think people will, they will pay for it if they see benefits, and you and I both have talked, and we know they will. Like they're seeing your sidewalk improvements, and now there's nobody complaining about that money because people are seeing the work take place.
I think that if we explain on town floor that if we do not make this a dedication of funds, it's going to cost the town in the long run because the projects we ignore every year become substantially more expensive because of the damage that occurs to private properties as well as our streets.
I agree.
I think that what you're saying, what I hear you saying, and to some extent you as well, Tom, is there's going to be a reluctance to accept this. We totally get that.
Yeah.
We've talked here about that day 6 years from now or 7 years from now,
right,
where we may not be able to increase tax revenue. And so my I say fear, but I guess my fear is we get to the point where we're laying off teachers, firefighters, library staff, class sizes going up to 30 kids instead of 24, and we're at that point because we simply can't generate enough revenue to sustain the community services that we provide today. And then people say, well, maybe we should here's this revenue source. It's going to cost us more to live in Long Meadow, but at least our quality of life will be sustained. We won't erode our quality of life by gouging our services. I mean, is it going to take us getting to that point before people will embrace this? Potentially. I'd like to, and this is where when people say there's no long-range plan, it makes me nuts, because this is a component of a long-range financial and capital plan for the town.
Yeah.
It is.
Because what we'll do is we will starve this fund or these projects until we hit the crisis, And then we'll have to decide, are we spending $1 million on this,
Yeah.
or are we going to fix the roof on a school?
Well, you did mention the one thing, and maybe it's a philosophy to go to the meeting, is an underwrite. And maybe you go in for $300,000 underwrite, just a token to throw in the warrant and say, look, we're in your behalf. I mean, it gives me something to have hope for.
Yeah.
Or, like I said, phase in the rate structure.
Yeah, but we've never done, have they ever done an underwrite in this town?
I'm all for the underwrite.
Yeah, never's been
If
done.
I think we've got to cut the tax at the same time we put in the fee.
But it's just a thought. I mean, we're chatting, but even if it's a third of it, just something that you give back to the community and say, we're trying.
So the question is, do we direct the town manager to go forward with finishing up this bylaw with a fee structure of option C?
Yes. You want a motion?
I need motion, yeah.
I present a motion that we instruct the town manager to proceed with the, the final wording of a bylaw modification for the town warrant with a fee structure as shown in the demonstration
Of
tonight.
option C, along with some abatement options tied to existing real estate abatements.
Right, and give some other thought, some of our other side discussions too, that it may be able to sell it better.
Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
We pretty well beat this to death.
Well, actually, I'm just going to say, I strongly feel I like the idea of the underride, because there are two things I want, is dedication of the infrastructure, that we're really spending our money, not playing games. We're spending the money on infrastructure that needs to be taken care of, and also that we're not just adding to the burden, but we're going to be pulling down on the taxes at the same time and distributing it. I'm not sure how other people feel about that.
Well, I think that an underride, would be tied to property taxes, right?
Yeah.
So people with larger properties would get a larger reduction on their taxes, whereas the enterprise fund is going to be based on averages. And so people with, people are kind of thrown in together, and that's why I think the rate structure really needs to reflect, if you're going to have an underride, then the rate structure should reflect something similar. I mean, I wouldn't want to pay, when you look at averages, and medians, they're not quite the same, and I wouldn't want to pay they've tried to have tax structures. They say everyone should pay the same rate, and it never passes because people think, well, wait, why should I pay the same amount as someone who's got a bigger house than me? And so that's why I think this thing just, you're looking at an underride, and it's going to be related to property tax, but this isn't going to be related to property tax or property
But,
size.
Tom, there is a correlation between the size of a property and the amount of property tax they pay in most cases. And like I said, we're talking 97%. 97% of the people that get a tax bill from us are like within this far of each other in terms of the difference this is going to make.
Right.
So
97%.
the principle of what you're saying, I agree with. The numbers just don't think bear out creating a customized system for a very small amount. What I think is going to turn out to be a very small amount of money and a very small number of homes. When you saw it, go back to the bell curve.
Here we go.
I mean, that's everybody within that small range, and the needle on the money is not going to move all that much in that range of those bars, and everything else is an outlier. So I don't want to get too hung up on the principle of it doesn't work this way,
Graduation.
because the numbers are so close that it really is going to make a meaningful impact on people's, like, when they write the check.
Well, yeah, I guess if you look at the normal distribution and what would be within 2 standard deviations of the mean, and most people are going to fall within that, but then you have other folks that are getting a pretty good deal.
I want you to listen to our concerns and then come back with what you can, Stephen.
Okay.
All in favor?
Well, the directive is option C. The directive is currently option C with some other things for everybody. So that's what we're going to do.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? All right, thank you very much. Did you want to talk about any of the other warrant articles, or should we just go directly to committees boards and committees. Do you want to say anything about IT funding?
Let me go back to I don't want to move off the topic too quickly. I know we've had a lot here.
Well, I think we're left with DPW issues and Greenwood for March 6th. And most everything else is taken care of. IT is sitting out there. Do you want to talk about that at all? Or are we all tired and want to just move on?
So, we've got a few citizens petitions in. DPW is going to be an eminent domain vote. We are working on that. Our town council was out of town last week.
Yeah, so we'll deal with it March 6th.
Yep.
So IT funding, did you want to tell us about that?
Can I
No.
ask one real quick one, though?
Uh,
Is it on track,
What?
DPW?
Yeah.
Everything, you don't see any bumps in the road?
I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
All right, you guys have more to
Thank you.
Thank you for
Appreciate your
help and
time
your
today.
presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kim.
Have a good night.
No blips on the radar?
None that I'm aware of right now, although our independent cost estimate may be later. The committee's meeting tomorrow night. I think they were expecting to have that information. I don't
Yeah.
think we're going to. I think the big thing is getting the word out with to the community. The appraisers have been doing their work. I know they're preparing their reports. We should be getting those in the very near future, and the cost estimate. So sometime in the next couple of weeks, we will need. There may be a few. I think. We start at the beginning of the meeting. I think we're further ahead in terms of addressing some of the warrant articles. So in the past, where we've had to kind of grind out each article one at a time and discuss them to death, we've tried to get the discussions out of the way. So when we get to open the warrant, it can just kind of go bang, 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 and put them all on the warrant or not on the warrant, depending on how the votes go, without having to belabor them too much. The DPW, I think, may require an extra meeting for some extra data input. And this bylaw potentially may need us get us a little closer to the wire on the publishing deadline.
May 7th, town meeting?
What?
May
March
7th?
9th and 10th.
May 9th.
May
And
9th,
10th.
okay.
May 9th and 10th.
Yeah, May 9th and 10th, so we're a little over 2 months out.
Yeah.
So are you saying, right now we have a meeting on March 6th. On the 13th, we were thinking of doing the public forum on the budget. And you're saying you would probably, will vote the warrant articles on the 20th?
I'm saying we may need a couple of meetings between.
Yeah, I think you normally had a couple of hearings on the budget. So I don't know if your intention was to have the forum or the budget hearing on the 13th, listen to the public, and then,
Right. And then go-
deliberate on the 14th and the 15th, or maybe even have a meeting even after the 6th on some of this other stuff, just to clean it up a little bit, but.
So you're saying we should have one more, because we were going to have the 13th, we were going to, after the public forum, meet on the budget. And so instead of kicking it out to the 20th, can we do the 20th?
But I think
Yes,
what he's saying, you can do 13th.
That's like the drop dead date.
Yeah, no, I think you could do 14th, 15th, maybe set up a couple of meetings for that week, or
Well-
I think you could have the public forum and have an agenda item
Yeah.
for consideration of the FY 2018 budget. If nobody shows up to the forum and offers any comment, there's no reason why they couldn't vote on it that night.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah.
When is the moderator scheduled for her forum? I can't remember.
That's in April 24th or something like that.
April 24th.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, is she going to open that up and have the senior issue on there too?
No. Well, I
think
don't
it's-
know.
We don't know how many issues. She might have stormwater, DIF, DPW.
Okay.
The senior one, right, and I can give a brief update on that. Maybe that's a
Okay.
good time to do that. Do you have more questions on DPW or no? So I just, the pieces, now that we've made some of these decisions, like the pieces, the diff language needs to be pulled together, the financing plan, like you said, it's mostly done. It's an oversight on my part that the language was not in the warrant, but I
Actually,
was,
it is in the warrant, it's 9 and 10 on the warrant.
no, that the language wasn't in the packet. But it wasn't
But
clear to
it
me.
was in the packet. Yes, yeah.
But it wasn't clear to me that so I did send those to you, and you did put them in the warrant.
Most of them.
Yeah, okay, because the warrant hasn't really been open, and we weren't voting on articles. I know they wanted some security today, and I want to try to give that for the planning board tomorrow. So, on the senior center, like I said, the request is going to be $250,000, which was the recommendation from the Adult Center Building Committee some months ago for the next phase of design.
And that's going to be presented on March 6th.
And that was one of the ones we present. That is in the warrant right now. That's in the draft warrant you have. In terms of what that gets you, we've been meeting internally per the board's directive to talk about planning a new facility. And I think as I reported, we've been kind of heading in the direction of maybe replacing Greenwood altogether with a new facility that would then include both Parks and Rec and the Adult Center. The short of it is, it's almost like the middle school discussion. If you upgrade one middle school, which one are you going to leave to continue to deteriorate? And that's the key question. So if we took and built a new COA, we're going to leave the daycare or the Greenwood Center, the Children's Center in Greenwood, which is going to need hundreds of thousands of dollars at some point in time in the near future anyway. So do you get a lot of bang for your buck by only building a senior center? Probably not. The facilities that are in Greenwood, the gymnasium, the things like that, aren't really all that great. They're outdated and undersized for what they're supposed to do anyway. So do we get a better return on our investment by building new for both sides? And that's the approach we're taking now. And I think one of the things we met today with the architect, and one of the things I'm pleased with is we have found ways to really achieve a lot of efficiencies in the design for the administrative spaces that are kind of the non-public, non-programming spaces by sharing square footage between the Adult Center and the Children's Center, and sharing a gymnasium, a dance studio, things
But
like
you'll
that.
be presenting that all on the 6th.
We will.
Yeah.
I'm just giving you a heads up of where we're at. But that's coming along nicely.
Are you talking about the same location?
He's
No, in a different part of the park. It's really the directive was a master plan for the whole park.
But you're talking about abandonment of Greenwood as it is?
Correct. Well, I mean,
Well, we're going to talk about that on the 6th. That's when you're going to make your presentation. We were in the middle of a
$400,000
discussion
electrical
on extra dates. So are we going to go with, how does the board feel? Do you want me to book the 14th and the 15th as other dates if they want to, or do we want to see how, we'll see the budget on the 6th. We could decide on the 6th if we're going to need how many dates and when we're going to need them. Because I didn't want to burden the board with too many dates, and so we right now have the 13th
When are you
for
going
the
to vote? When are you going to vote the warrant?
Well, we've sort of breezed through most of it. We can vote the warrant on the 6th.
No later than the 20th.
No later
On
than
the
the
6th, and you're
20th.
talking about this guy briefing us on the 6th?
No, we're talking about briefing us on that warrant article.
Well, that's part
Yes.
of the warrant.
Okay, we could go to the
Okay.
20th. Or
Okay.
if the board feels they want an extra days during the month, the weekend of March 13th. So that's what I'm trying to figure out, if you want extra days.
Yeah. I don't know, it seems like you got some things that are changing that have not been totally brought before the board, so I just, shoot some caution out there and say we need to get all the information out.
That's why we've been trying to do it through 3 different meetings on the warrant.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how people feel on Tuesdays. Was
It's
that a
always
tough day for
easier on
you?
Mondays.
That's why I was
you
trying
know.
to keep it to the
But
13th, the
I know that
6th.
Mark, he needs some advance notice, because he couldn't be here tonight, you know.
well, I mean, in all fairness to us, I mean, in past years we've met every single night for 2 weeks straight.
At times, yeah.
Yeah. And so the fact that we are trying to keep it on Mondays is a credit to the board and the efficiency of getting through the stuff in advance, but we just may need some special meetings to get through a few things.
So do you like Tuesdays or Wednesdays better?
Wednesdays, I guess.
Wednesdays? How about you? Does it matter? Does it matter to you? Okay, why don't we make March 15th? We'll be on the 13th. Oh, the 15th's bad? I know that's your birthday, but.
I think we've met on my birthday like every
Every
year,
single time.
so.
I do have something, I mean,
Or do you want to do March 8th?
Well, can I throw something out?
The Ides of March.
Yeah, beware of the Ides of March. So that's why they said that. Maybe do it a little earlier in the evening. I know we've done that sometimes too. We've mixed
No,
up the
he says
times.
he's busy on the 15th.
well, yeah, I have something I don't necessarily have to do. It's a dinner that
Well, we
could
could
get
do
out.
March 8th just as easily, because we've got the warrant in front of us.
I'm supposed to be at the Finance Committee meeting March 8th, but that's fine.
Oh, that's right.
But like at 6 o'clock, I mean, most of these other things are at 7.
Oh, it's at 6 o'clock with the...
No, the finance committee is at 7, so if the select board met at 6, we could get some work done in that hour. Same thing on the 15th.
Everyone okay with the 6 o'clock start on the 8th?
Only if the chair supplies food.
On the 8th.
Pardon?
That's as long
If I
as-
provide food, that's fine. I'll bring you a free
Nah.
pasticcio.
Right up our alley.
Yeah, right up early now.
Is that what you
Yep.
like, pasticcio?
Whatever, just set the time and date.
Okay, so the 8th at 6 o'clock
I
and the
live for
13th at
meetings.
6. Okay, so we'll start an hour early at each one.
What time is it, Marie? What's the date?
The 8th,
It's a Wednesday, and the meeting is from 6 to 7.
yes. And then
One
we'll
hour?
start this, 1 hour. And then we'll start the March 13th at 6 o'clock also,
What are we going to do for 1 hour on 3/8? What's the purpose of that meeting?
to vote through most of the warrant.
In 1 hour? You're a dreamer.
Well, we've gone
Send me
over
some- send me
almost
some-
every single item here.
Yeah, but
But you know what? You could tell me that failed afterwards, not
well, you
before.
you just said he was going to brief us now. Come on, now.
But we've already briefed, I mean, there's 40 articles, you could probably get through 20 of them, not the least of
Okay,
which is
fine.
CPA, which are pass-throughs anyway. You could nail down minimally half the warrant in 1 hour.
Okay, you think the board can get through that warrant in 1 hour? Send me some of that
Too
stuff you
bad
guys
you weren't
want.
here last week. We got through a lot last week.
Maybe I'm the obstacle. I can leave.
Yeah, or
then.
you could, we'll plan a vacation.
I'm sure that's not right, Richard.
Yes, I can make myself scarce pretty quick.
You should watch last
Yeah.
week, the meeting.
Oh, that's
So
all I
what time
can
was it on the 13th?
The 13th at 6
We were
o'clock also.
whipping
Is the
Julie.
I
forum?
bet you
The
were.
forum, do you want to do at 7? And then we'll continue afterwards, after the forum, we'll continue our meeting. And
Sounds good.
then we will book the 15th just in case we need an extra day.
And
But we'll try not to, Bill. We really will.
Oh, I think I have a band concert, not my band concert, the kids' band concert
Let me
that
know
night
what
too.
all
So if
What
we
time?
did, that's at 7, so if we did it earlier.
I quit
You want
writing
to do
dates.
5?
I don't, you can't
Oh,
make
you
5
can't. You
on.
can't
On
do
what
5.
time? 5?
Wednesday at 5?
Wednesday at 5?
Yeah.
Well, I'd be hungry, but
How about
Oh, I
one?
could feed you. Is that it?
that would, yeah, Wednesday at 5.
Yeah, so why don't we do the 8th at 5? I'll bring food, Richard, and we'll do the 15th at 5, and then maybe we'll be able to finish everything up.
And the 13th at 7.
13th at 6,
Oh.
6, yeah.
6 then
13th at
7.
6.
6 then 7. So business meeting at 6, budget forum at 7, potential business meeting after.
I'll just scratch the whole night. I'll start at 6.
Yeah,
Bring a
And then
pillow.
But the 6th is going to be our regular starting time, 7.
Yes, yes. You think so? Yeah.
Huh?
The 6th.
So I have a 6
at
and
7.
5,
Yeah,
a 6 and
6
5.
and 7.
Okay.
Oh,
All
no, a 7 and 5, 6 and 5.
right, I'll send
You get it
everyone
all?
that
Okay.
out, okay?
Great.
Okay, what else?
And so now we just have to do board and committee appointments. Let's see, where is that paper? Do I hear a motion to put Katie Petrakis on a one-year associate term expiring June 30th, 2017?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Who made the motion?
Tom?
I made a
Second it?
motion for Katie Petrakis.
Yeah, all those in favor? All those abstaining? Are you voting for Katie?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure,
All
okay.
right, now, how we're going to organize the building committee? Do we just want to take the first 3, make them the 3-year terms? Is
Okay.
there a motion to appoint?
Did they make any preference on what the terms they wanted?
No. Do I hear a motion on who to put in the 3-year terms expiring June 30th, 2019?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion for the new building committee for Mary Beth Bergeron, William Dierkens, and Peter Greenberg for 3-year terms expiring in 6/30/19.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Do I hear a motion for two people for the 2 3-year term?
Are you voting on it?
No idea, I was
Do
going
you
to
wanna
discuss.
Oh, I didn't hear you. I said any
You didn't
discussion.
say anything. You said any discussion, you said all in favor.
Okay, any discussions? Richard?
Yeah, I think we need to have some serious consideration for Chris Cove in that quadre of the 3 permanents.
3 years.
Or the 3 years. He's been the chair on this, on the present building committee on DPW, and he's done a whale of a good job on that.
Okay, so do you have an amendment to the?
No, I just,
you would have
I
to
didn't know
amend
that's
it.
the way you're going to do, what do you got, 333, 322?
322.
2.
Okay.
So do you want to amend?
No, you've already voted on it.
No, we haven't. Do you want to amend it?
No, you voted on it, Marie, it's
No, we
all
just-
done. I'm just saying, he's a current member, he's a current chair of an active committee that has been at it for a year.
Well,
and we
if you
ju- and
want
we
to
just-
amend it, we haven't voted because you pointed out there was still a time for discussion. So if you want to, you can amend Chris Coven to that name.
What's that?
And so you would,
They voted the first
Wanna
3
substitute.
names on the list as the 3-year appointments. I brought up the fact on Chris Cove that I thought, like, he should be one of the 3-year
I
appointments.
agree.
Then, do you want to put the amendment in?
Yes, I want to amend that to switch Chris Cove with William Durkin.
Is there,
Yeah.
is there a second on the motion, on the amendment?
Because then you've got one person who was on this, very experienced school building committee, and 2 that are on the current committee, that are on building committees now.
That's true.
There's another thing, Marie. This is not the full, aren't we going to have 9 people on this thing when we fully staff it?
No, I believe it was supposed to be 7.
But we didn't, that's all we have.
We
is
only have
7 when we
6.
first staffed?
Yeah.
Is there, I know you got 3, 2, and 2. Is there any thought about having a team of 4 people on the 3-year appointments? 4 people, and then have the 2 and the 1s, or something like that? Have a strong,
Why did we go with 322? Stephen, do you know?
Sorry, what?
That was the charge that
That was?
I've had.
You
I have
mean
2 packets,
322 on the terms?
yeah, 3, 2, 2.
Can you specify like a term?
I think that's the start, though. That's just the start.
They can always be
And then once they're into their terms, it's so you can have staggered terms.
Right, no, I understand the staggered terms. You got 3, 2, 2s.
Well, are you saying you don't like the idea of Chris Cove being replacing William Durkin?
every year.
No, I'm wondering if we shouldn't have 4 core people. 4
Well,
for the 3
just because
years.
they have a expiring term doesn't mean they're not core.
Well, it's a continuity base of the solid 4 years. They may drop off, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter.
Yeah, because we'll just re-up
Maybe
them if
not.
they're willing to come up again.
Yeah, maybe it doesn't matter.
But is there a second for his movement of Chris Cove up?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment to
So
the motion?
the 3 now would be Mary Beth, Peter Greensburg, and Chris Cove.
Yes.
Okay?
All those in favor of the amendment? Okay. Now, how about the
The original motion as amended.
Yeah, as amended. All those in favor?
Okay.
Okay. So now the 3-year terms, Mary Beth, Peter, and Chris.
Right.
Now, is there a motion for the 2 3-year terms expiring June 30th, 2018?
I would say William Durkin, and just down the list, Mary Beth Morris.
Mhm.
Is there a second?
Yeah, second. They're all 2-year terms now.
Yeah.
Well, the one's expired.
Oh, for the
One expired,
18th? Yeah, for the
just
18th, okay.
reappoint.
Yeah, I'll second.
Any
Okay.
further discussion on that? All those in favor? And a motion for the 1 3-year term
So moved.
Louise
for
Kroll.
Louise Kroll. So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Tom, second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, a motion for Michael Doyle to be.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Motion.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Okay.
Andrea Chason,
So moved.
So moved.
second.
Yeah.
Second, Tom. Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, now we have Historic Commission. We have 2 3-year terms, and there are 3 people. Is there a motion?
Well,
Has anybody had any conversation with any of these three?
What do
They
you mean?
were all here and.
No, I mean,
We're here.
outside of that.
I
No.
know Andrea Taper, she's the one that works at the library at Springfield College. I know her, so, you know, she'd be a well-organized person.
I wonder,
I know.
and I usually wouldn't take this route, I just wonder if it's not in the best interest of us. We got three highly qualified people. I wonder if we'd be better off just drawing names from a hat on this one.
Well, look, it says 2 3-year terms expiring in just a few months.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then I believe that 3 terms are coming up, correct?
Well, I understand, but I mean, I don't know how, town manager, have any thoughts?
3-year term.
Gee, is that the bus? This came right over me. To be honest with you, I try not to get involved in the board and committee appointments, but I guess part of the issue is I think we put people into positions on boards and committees when they don't have the experience we envisioned when we created the committee, just because there's open spots versus holding out for an applicant that may have more likely experience. And so we just kind of do that. Now we're in the opposite problem where we don't want to exclude anybody because there aren't enough positions.
Right. And we got 3 people that are amply interested and seem to have a lot of unique qualifications.
I mean, I think that in a perfect world, you just evaluate their criteria, their experience, skills, their interview performance, and just say we like these two. We like these two fit how they fit on the committee better than the other one. And then encourage the other one to come back and apply for the next open seat because you're really impressed with them, like you would do kind of filling a job.
Why don't we, since there's no commitment on this right now, why don't we move that last one, we'll do it on the 6th. Everyone can go back and look at the bios, and then we can vote on the 6th. So I'll move that one on to the next one. I won't look for a motion.
We got time, Debbie? We're not running out of time?
I didn't check.
The other thing is that people can continue in holdover status. We don't like doing that indefinitely, but if we have to hold over while we get to the other business, so be it.
All right, is there anything on the town manager's report you want to give us?
I can't even.
Think of it. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
Does anyone want to fight against the?
I'm not ready for that.
You've been known to do that
It's
before.
only 10:30, yeah.
It's early,
Any
Marie.
discussion?
It's early.
It's an hour later than I expected.
I know, me too. I just looked up, I'm like, oh, it's only 9. Wait a minute.
We do it even now.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
It's
Oh,
4-0.
in closing, yeah, we mentioned it. We've got some extremely highly qualified applicants this time on all the committees. I mean, you're right, Stephen. We haven't experienced this problem as severe as it is this time. We're getting a lot of highly qualified people wanting to serve.
Wonderful form of government.
Yeah, wonderful form of government.
Thank you very much for joining us. We're actually going to be back here next Monday,
Monday.
the 6th. Thank you.
I'm not.